This podcast is brought to you on Roku and Fire TV by Pod Nation Podcast TV. Find us on X, Facebook, Instagram, or wherever podcasts are broadcast. Download our app and never miss a show with video on demand as well as exclusive content found only on Pod Nation TV. Live from Seoul, South Korea, it's the Monster Island Film Vault, episode 88, Attack of the Crab Monsters and Island Claws, featuring Damon Noyes. Hello, Kaiju lovers, and welcome to the Monster Island Film Vault, a podcast seeking entertainment and enlightenment through tokusatsu. I am your host, Monster Island's film curator, Nate Marchand, still on the road, trying to hustle up some escaped kaiju. Yeah, sure, Jimmy. We're doing a pretty decent job. Yeah, we are, but still not in our normal job description until our contracts were changed. Yeah, but we're not going there. I'm still a little salty. That joke will make more sense in a little bit about that. But today's actually a pretty momentous day for season 4 with us on this world tour. Today is our first Patreon sponsored episode, sponsored by none other than MIFV's executive producer and top patron, Damon Noyes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I was glad to be here. Be sure to try the crab stew.
Oh, I didn't realize you were also an Elvis impersonator in your spare time.
Oh, don't be cruel. No, glad to be here. Happy to be here. Just a joy to be here to talk about these two fantastic movies.
I know. This is also a little bit of an experiment today. This is the first time that we've done a double feature. This was actually your suggestion when you sponsored this.
And I have to give this is pre-shout out because I would never have heard of Island Claws had it not been for another podcast run by Patrick O'Reilly, who did Island Claws on Vintage Video. He clued me into this little gem, and I said, I gotta see it. I watched it. I said, yep, that has enough similarities to Attack of the Giant Crabs. We gotta make a double feature.
Yep, we have to make a double feature out of it. So come for Corman, stay for 80s schlock or something.
Robert Lansing scowling his way through the Florida Keys.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it's which is also the other interesting thing. This is MIFV's first Roger Corman movie. I'm not counting your previous Patreon episode because that was a remake. Little Shop of Horrors. That was the musical. Really that wasn't Corman.
It doesn't really count. I understand. Eventually, we'll do the original.
I said eventually we'll probably have to.
It's got a puppet.
It's got a puppet. Yeah, you're the puppet guy.
Puppet postman. That's right.
The ugly puppet or the ugly puppet guy, ugly puppet master.
Now, wait a minute. What? Ugly? Does it have to be ugly? Just because Crazy Bernice and the Giant Claw and this giant crab in Corman's. It's just because they're poorly made and poorly conceived and poorly performed doesn't mean they're necessarily ugly. They're unique. That's right, Jimmy. Everybody deserves love. And might I say, nice new voice.
Oh, yeah. He has a new microphone. It still sounds a bit weird, but it sounds better. Anyway, it's a step up.
It is a step up.
Yeah.
And with all he's been through over the past few years, a little upgrading for him.
For sure.
Is needed.
For sure. Good question. Before we get started, what's better, this or crab monsters, I should say, or Giant Claw?
I'm going to defer to my wife, who watched both movies with me, and she says that the Giant Claw is actually a better movie.
Go figure.
She pointed out that the way that the characters were written, the way they were performed, and just in general, the mystery leading up to the marionette in Giant Claw was actually quite good. And if not par for the course for the 1950s, at least maybe a step above your typical schlock. And they just, ran out of money at the end and had to get cheap labor from Mexico to build their monster.
Good point, Jimmy. We have a lot to cover with this.
Yes, we do.
And we're experimenting with the format a little. So I'm going to play our handy dandy sounder, and Damon, we'll cue up some epic and or funny music for you, but let us know what happens in our first movie, 1957's Attack of the Crab Monsters.
Produced and directed by Roger Corman, the Schlockmeister himself, who has never lost a dime on a single movie, and it shows. This movie takes place on an island that was in the path of a radioactive cloud from all the nuclear testing. I shouldn't say nuclear testing because they did mention Hiroshima, where all the fallout hit. So a team is sent to discover, is plant life and animal life going to survive this? Well, unfortunately, we come in the middle of that story because the first team disappeared without a trace. We come in with the second team, and they've got to find out what went wrong with the first group. While they're there, strange things start happening. They start hearing voices, earthquakes, landslides, and it's all because of 2 mutant giant crabs. Because you can't get any better than giant monsters on an isolated island that is slowly disappearing into the sea. And I'm going to leave it at that. That's all we need to know for now.
Yeah. That's the setup for everything, because, oh boy, there's a big twist. As weird as it sounds, there's a big twist in this. And I'm like, okay, I don't want that given away until we discuss it.
I would have been just happy if everything that was going wrong was because the giant crabs were burrowing and burrowing and burrowing just as part of their natural tendencies. But no, not at all. This was the 1950s, the atomic age. So, of course, wacky, weird, radioactive stuff had to happen.
Yes, because as one of my sources put it, I'm trying to remember, it was Mike Bogue, actually. I'm looking at my books over here. Mike Bogue, who wrote Apocalypse Then, who said, radiation, like God, works in mysterious ways. Basically, I'm paraphrasing slightly.
I really like that.
Because that's what this was. Radiation in the 50s and 60s was magic. And then you get to the 80s, and going forward in the 80s, it was starting to shift from radiation to genetics. And then after that, genetics was magic.
Yes. Well, all culminating in the movie Splice, which I don't know if you've seen it yet, but got some weird stuff because of gene splicing. So gene
splicing. There's plenty of weird things, on Monster Island at this point, namely, Crazy Bernice. But
now it's rogue AI and virtual reality. So
yeah, there you go. So it's all over the place. So I went into this completely cold, and I'm glad that I did. I went into it thinking, it's going to just be literally the title, and technically, as my friend Luke Giaconetti likes to say on his show, and I think his brother says this on his podcast as well, namely Earth Destruction Directive and Bots, Bugs, and Babes. It says, you get what it says on the tin. You get giant crabs, and they do attack. But I didn't realize that it was going to end up being wilder than that. Because
I have to object here for a minute because of the limitations that Corman always puts on his movies. There is actually only one crab filmed twice. I mean, we're talking zero budget dude here. I have an interesting note about that. Corman always had an unofficial stock company of people he worked with. Paul Blaisdell was his normal guy to go to for special effects and monster building. Dude flat out rejected Corman. He said, I cannot do this project with the budget you are giving me. And the budget for the making this singular giant crab to be played, $400. $400 out of $70,000 total. That's
in 1957.
In 1957.
Keep talking. I'm going to find out how much that is in present day dollars.
It's if Paul Blaisdell, who you've seen all these Corman movies, you've seen the stuff that they make with very little budget, and some of it's quite good for what money is available. And he said, I can't do this for this budget. That's saying something, because he was a magician when it came to just pulling stuff together and making it look halfway decent for a movie. But shout out to Paul Blaisdell, because wow. He stood up to Corman, and not many people do that and continue to work.
No. It sounds like, because admittedly, I mean, I'm fairly familiar with Corman, but this was the first time I did any sort of research on Corman, and Corman sounds like he was as quote unquote frugal, if we want to be nice, frugal as he was. He also sounds like he was really tough.
He was a bit of a dictator when he was especially when he was directing, but as a producer, it's funny, in interviews, he comes across as this very soft-spoken, genial, kind of...
Wow, okay.
Nice
I just crunched the numbers.
Yes.
$400 in 2023 money would be $4,318.
I defy any special effects house to build a giant crab monster puppet that can function and interact with people for that amount of money and make it believable. It's not possible.
Right. And the movie was made for $70,000 in 1957. That would be, we'll round up, $756,000.
Which is bare bones independent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so less than so $750,000, basically. By the way, the inflation rate,
it's insane.
Just to make you cry.
I always do.
979%.
Wow. Yikes. Oh.
Yeah. But it made, cost $70,000, but it made $1 million at the box office.
That's right. It was an incredible success, and because of that success, and because it was so early in Corman's career as a giant monster movie, he has refused remake rights.
Mm-hmm. Even though there was someone who wanted to make a remake. I actually am going to look that up here really quick. That's in my notes, but someone wanted to make a remake.
Absolutely. And he just said no.
And it was someone who had remade one of, right here, Jim Wynorski, who did a remake of Not of This Earth, which is what this movie was on double bill with. So think about this. This was, I don't know which one was first, because the term B movie comes from, the A movie is what plays first and the B movie is what plays second in a double feature. And so they would have the good one, quote unquote, good one as the A picture. And then the B movie would be the lesser of them. I'm wondering which way, if this was first or second, because that would mean this would have been a B movie to a B movie.
Well, I think this classifies as a C movie rather than a B movie. So I think Not of This Earth is a more thinky movie.
Yeah.
So I think that would be the B movie, and then, or played as the A movie.
Yeah. So anyway, so he remade Not of This Earth, and he wanted to remake this. He said a script was written.
Yeah.
But, quote, Corman, didn't want to do it. He thinks too much of the original film to do a remake, end quote.
And okay, since this was your first outing, I have seen this many times since I was 6 years old.
I was going to say, I want to hear you. You mentioned this before we went on the air. I want you to share your story.
I want to hear
this film.
I want to hear your impression.
Movie, I should say. What?
I want to hear. I want to hear your impression first at whether this is a B or a C grade movie from your first out. I know you're looking at it as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
We have expectations for what monster movies are supposed to be, even though we are all Godzilla lovers here.
Mm-hmm.
General, because I know you kept looking over at me. Do you want to know right now? Do you want to know right now? No, save it for the podcast. Come on.
Yeah, save it for the podcast. I would say this is very firmly a B picture, a B movie. I do think, and I read some essays and all that actually say, yeah, it's a B movie, but it's actually pretty decent as B movies go. It gets really wild toward the end.
Yes, it does.
More like halfway through. And I think the fact that it just goes completely nuts about halfway through it ingratiated me to it a little bit more, I should say. And it is actually pretty well directed. There's some good atmosphere throughout it. Mm-hmm. I do the thing that it's and the acting's okay. The acting's okay.
I have to give a shout out to ladies and gentlemen, this is a first for us. We have an actual television star in this particular movie. He goes on later on to be the professor on Gilligan's Island. Russell Johnson is the breakout star in this movie.
A lot of people got their start with Corman.
Well, Jack Nicholson got his start. Was it Scorsese? Can't remember. One of the big directors got his start as working for Corman. It's ridiculous the amount of talent that came out of Corman's unofficial stock company.
By the way, Corman is still alive. The man is
yes.
97 years old
and still pretty sharp. He's still he produces those schlock sci-fi.
Yeah. Well, and hilariously, he has a degree from Stanford College in, of all things, industrial engineering.
One has to wonder if he made any of those really sappy 1950s industrial movies.
I
The
don't
Workplace
know.
and You.
I don't know.
I'm
but
sure he had
let me
his
see, because there's a list. If you go to his Wikipedia page, it does list some of the people who got their start with him.
I'll read some of those.
So James Cameron, the director. Joe Dante, the director.
That's right.
And James Horner, the composer. Ron Howard.
Ronnie Howard.
Yep. Even though I would say Andy Griffith gave him his start because he was on TV. You know, he was Opie in the Andy Griffith Show. But,
of course.
You know, Gail Ann Hurd, who was a producer, very well-known producer, famously produced the Terminator films.
Yes.
Martin Scorsese.
I was right. It was Scorsese.
Yep. He did a movie for Corman called Boxcar Bertha.
Oh. Yeah.
Irvin Kershner, who's a director, famously directed Empire Strikes Back and RoboCop 2.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm trying to see. Those are people who are behind the camera. I'm trying to see if there were people in front of the camera.
Actors who got their start.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I can find that.
Wow, Peter Bogdanovich even.
Yeah.
Wow. Jonathan Demme.
Mm-hmm.
That's another big name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the guy was prolific. He directed or produced, I think he directed, like 80 some movies, and he's produced about 300.
Yeah, and he just keeps going because he will not stop. But
he will not stop. Yeah.
Instead of, and just even beyond the independent stuff he did in the 50s and 60s, he's got New World Pictures, Millennium Films, New Horizons. Moved over to the Sci-Fi Channel.
New World Pictures, which is going to come up again later eventually in Godzilla Redux.
Yep.
Because Godzilla 85. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Wait. What's that? Corman is expanding into new ventures? A restaurant on the island? What the heck? We leave for a couple of months and crazy things are happening on the island. Corman's Crab Shack.
It fits. It totally fits.
Wow. Corman's Crab Shack. And it's on the beta site? Let me guess, because it's cheaper? Of course. Of course. And he has an impossible taxidermy of Hulard the crab. I wonder what happened to that thing.
Well, it was technically buried in the cave where it died. So
yeah, but it's supposed to have no cohesion between its atoms, and it's basically liquid. Anyway, we'll get to that.
Corman is used to making things with nothing, so
yeah,
we'll give him this one.
I wonder how good the business is going to be there, because the beta site's a tiny bit more dangerous. You should know.
Yeah, I mean, as long as they stay out of the shadow of Crazy Bernice.
Yeah.
And okay.
Well, isn't Corman's old friend Audrey 2 hanging out there too?
That's on the east side of the island.
Yeah.
Because she's pretty much taken over, and I think I think the good doctor is keeping her corralled with his mushrooms.
Yes. Yeah, Mr. Dorff. Yeah, Dr. Dorff, I should say. The man has a doctorate. I'm a little astonished he has a doctorate. One of these days, I'm going to try to figure out what happened to him, but I'm a little scared to ask. Anyway.
I'm sure it was a correspondence course. I don't think that anybody could have sat next to him in a class.
Yeah. At least as he is now. But anyway, let's get back to this movie. So my impression is it was better than I expected because it just went full tilt wild. Because I thought it was just going to be very typical. I thought it was just, oh look, giant atomic radiated crabs. Oh yay! But apparently, even that was pretty unique at the time because we had the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, and and a lot of giant insects, with them and
beginning of the end,
the deadly mantis.
Do not disrespect the deadly mantis.
I have
deadly
a mantis in my pantis.
Oh, you did not go there.
MSD3K, man, MSD3K. But so there was all of those. And, some other, giant irradiated animals. So the fact that it was crabs is actually kind of unique compared to the rest of them in the era.
Yeah. But I can understand why he went that direction. The popularity of them in 1954, and it was incredibly popular.
Mm-hmm. And I would actually say that is an A-grade picture. People think it's a B movie. It's not it. No. That's a great picture right there.
No, and it is the superior movie, as we all know. I mean, yes, they only had like 2 or 3 ants to work with,
but they made them look like a horde.
yes, they were very good at making it seem that there were more of them, and part of that has to do with the sound engineering, because the sound of that everywhere and the echoes that they used made it seem like there were more of them.
Hence, like I said, that is one of the things that, like I said, this movie is good with tension and it's good with atmosphere. Much better than I was expecting. So credit to Corman. I know the big problem from what you were telling me was that the screenwriter wanted to had a more intellectual concept behind this, as weird as that sounds.
Should we just dive right into why this movie is so weird?
Yeah, well, I will in a second, but I do want to mention that Corman actually credits the title for part of why it succeeded. But the funny thing is, that actually wasn't the original. That was one of 2 titles that he suggested. Yep. He talked with his assistant. I don't know the name of the assistant, unfortunately. I couldn't find that anywhere. But it was a woman, apparently. And he said, what do you like better? Attack of the Crab Monsters or Attack of the Lobster Monsters? And she said, I like lobsters. I don't think it should be lobsters.
I like lobsters. It shouldn't be lobsters, because why do you want lobsters to be monsters?
Yeah.
And even in 1950s, crabs was a colloquial term for lice of a specific breed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
An infestation, as you will.
Yeah.
And so there could have been that prurient thing, as a lot of other Corman movies, which are, let's call it, exploitation movies.
That was something else when I was watching this. By modern standards, it's not all that shocking, but I'm watching this and it's like, this is actually pretty shocking for a 1957 movie. Like, people are getting decapitated. We do see a decapitated body.
Okay.
At the beginning, and I'm like, I bet it's because Corman's independent. He's not bound by the Hays Code.
Not just having a decapitation and seeing a decapitation. It happens before it, right after. Okay, we have a voiceover by Russell Johnson, who is not credited with that voiceover, reading a line of scripture.
Yes, which threw me off a little bit. It's like, what does this have to do with the rest of the movie? And I know what the reference is. I'm quite familiar with it, because it's from Genesis 6:7, which is basically, and God looked upon earth and saw the wickedness of man and decided to destroy mankind. It's basically setting up Noah's Ark and the flood. And so, what is this? What relevance does this have?
And that's just it. You don't know until the very end, when you realize that the crabs are undermining and destroying the island to make it smaller and smaller and smaller, thus creating a flood.
A flood, yeah, I guess. The connections are
a stretch. It's a stretch. You have to have Mr. Fantastic arms to get there. But
Mr. Fantastic! The one movie Corman made that never got released. He's gone on record as saying that. It's like, I have made hundreds of movies. This is the one that never got released.
And I had to throw that in there just for my Corman.
Oh my gosh. Yes. For those who don't know, I don't know how you wouldn't know this, but Roger Corman, believe it or not, made a Fantastic Four movie for $6 million in the early 90s because Marvel asked him to, and then Marvel canned it 2 months before the movie was supposed to release.
And shelved it. And the ironic part, we in the fandom, Marvel fandom, have all seen it already. We all have bootleg copies of it because
it's on YouTube.
It is the most accurate depiction of Doctor Doom on film.
It's also one of the weirdest.
It's Doom talking about Doom in third person. It is the most comic book accurate. He's got the most comic book accurate costume. He sits on his throne and pontificates. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's what Doom is supposed to be.
Yeah. Anyway,
back to this movie. Now, I want to point out that not the opening title, the musical score, is from World Without End from 1956.
Yeah, when I was watching it, I seriously thought for a minute it was the original King Kong.
It's like this. Okay, I know this music, and I know it's not from this movie. Why am I hearing this?
Yeah, by the way, the screenwriter, since we're hinting at the writing, is Charles B. Griffith.
Yeah.
Who's actually sort of going to come up again later in the season. But we'll get to that.
he has one of the pretty diverse. He was also, by the way, the director of the underwater scenes.
He was the sailor who gets decapitated.
Yes, Seaman Tate. I have something to say about that because I'm sorry. I forgot that not even 4 minutes into this, we have a gruesome decapitation and death, and they don't pull any punches. They pull up a headless body. And because it's in black and white, I'm absolutely positive that they said, yeah, just put some like chocolate syrup coming out of the stump so it looks like blood.
Yeah, because it's black and white. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Which, by the way, speaking of the black and white, I got a message, an email from the board saying that they were a little disappointed with me because my acquisition for this film to put into the vault is apparently subpar.
Oh, yeah.
Because there are scenes in the copy that I got where if the characters are moving across the screen very quickly, or if there's a very quick panning shot, there's this kind of wobbly underwater effect, weirdly enough.
Yeah,
it has to do with the encoding, with the DVD encoding. Why did you get this one? It's like, because the limited run Blu-ray from Shout Factory is long out of print, and you won't give me enough money to buy it. You want a better version of this movie in the vault? You gotta increase my budget here, guys.
They're working with Corman budget too, so
yeah, apparently.
But yeah, Charles Griffith also wrote Death Race 2000, another Corman classic, The Little Shop of Horrors, the original.
You mean Death Race? Oh, he's Death Race. I thought you sounded like you said Rays, like Death Race, like
no, Death Race.
It's 2000. Death Race. Yeah.
It conquered the world with the. I believe that is a giant piece of asparagus that attacks the world. Not of This Earth, the double billing. Beast from Haunted Cave, Creature from the Haunted Sea, The She-Beast, and he was a collaborator on Jane Fonda's Barbarella.
Yeah, that's probably that's probably his most well-known piece, I would say, out of his.
You know what? Death Race 2000.
Death Race 2000, yeah. Barbarella and Death Race 2000 is probably his two biggest claims to fame.
Are pretty schlocky, yeah.
Yeah. Also, I'm looking at his filmography. He also made a movie called Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hype.
Yes.
Like, what is that?
It's bad. It's what it is.
And wait, Wizards of the Lost Kingdom 2? Wasn't that on MST3K?
Probably.
I think it was. Yes, because it has David Carradine. I've seen that. They did both of them. But
most of the Carradines did some really bad movies.
Yeah. But he also had a laundry list of unmade movies.
Yeah.
But yeah. So the guy did a lot, and it sounds like, as weird as it sounds, he sounds like a guy who tried to write B movies intelligently. But he was working for Roger Corman, whose philosophy was lots of action or the promise of action in every scene.
Yeah, and in later, like in the 60s, it was lots of action and boobs. So
yeah, certainly, and then that just kept getting progressively raunchier as time went on, and then you get to the 80s with stuff like Galaxy of Terror, which admittedly he did partially as a bit of a middle finger to one of the who was it? It was one of the financiers of the movie. Because
it's been too long.
Well, from what I understand, because I haven't seen Galaxy, I've only seen clips of Galaxy of Terror.
Oh, you have to see it. You have to see Joni Cunningham in a movie.
Yeah, let's just say that one of the financiers told him, is like, we're only going to give you money if you put a nude scene in it. He's like, okay, fine, but it's going to be the most awkward, unsexy nude scene you've ever seen.
Yeah.
So it's like he just did it to stick it to him. And I'm like, okay, if you want to know what happens, go do your own research. I don't want to talk about it right now. Yes, I'm stealing one of your lines, Jimmy. But anyway.
All right.
So do we just want to get into it? But like, what makes this movie just that wild?
We should. We have steered around this elephant in the room long enough.
Yeah, the giant crab in the room.
We need to let the curtain down.
Yeah. There's other things that we'll talk about, but this was the moment when I got to it. I'm like, you have got to be. Well, first off, I was like, wait a minute. Okay, we got to set this up. There comes a point in a movie, you mentioned it in your synopsis, where the characters start hearing voices from the people from the previous expedition who died.
And then every other person who dies.
And then whoever dies after that. So we got our token scientist lady, who, by the way, I should note, unlike a lot of 50s sci-fi movies, the guys never question her competence.
No, but she's definitely not as forcefully competent as, one, the woman in Them, or two, the woman in the giant claw.
Who might be the best one, because she picks up a gun and says, I grew up in Montana, and that was it.
Why she's a better shot than the guy.
But anyway,
he was just a scientist. So.
Yeah. But we all, well, in this one, it's like, I'm a scientist and I'm pretty in a swimsuit. Okay.
And I'm the fiance of the other scientist, but I'm making eyes at Russell Johnson, the professor.
Yeah.
Because he's a man's man.
Yeah, go figure. Yeah. And although that love triangle was handled with a remarkable amount of maturity and tact, even though it's hardly there, because subplots be danged in this movie.
As a child, I never noticed it. Obviously, I kind of half slept through the talkie parts. But as an adult, I realized, wow, they could have done so much more with this and made this even more interesting.
Yeah.
I'm actually wanting to see where this goes, because I'm sorry. The professor comes really close to crossing that line.
Yeah, funny enough, the Duncan, what was it? Duncan is her last name.
Pamela Duncan.
Pamela Duncan. One of my books said that she had the biggest lips in Hollywood at the time in the pre-collagen days.
They were pretty voluptuous.
Yeah, they were. But they also said that. I have in my notes, one of the actors in this said, "Oh, this was the worst movie I ever made, but it was also the most fun. But it was also a fun shoot."
I can imagine.
I know we're dancing on, but we're on this, so welcome to tangents. But it was Mel Wells said it was the worst movie I've ever been in, but it was a fun shoot. Miss Duncan, on the other hand, did not have fun.
No.
Yeah, she refused to swim in the water with live sharks, which was filmed at an aquarium called Marineland.
Yep, in Florida.
So they had to get a Navy man to double as her, because she would not get in the water. And she didn't like getting in the water also because someone forgot to turn on her air valve on her scuba gear. So she's like, nope.
I'm going to nope right out of here, Roger.
Nope. Well, there was also a guy who actually injured himself making the while on the movie, and Roger Corman just said, "Put a Band-Aid on it and do it again."
Yeah,
basically.
Now, what I think is interesting is because they were filming kind of on.
It was Russell Johnson. He broke his little toe.
Yeah,
they taped it up, and he said, "Do it again."
What I think is interesting is that
it was gaffer's tape.
3 of these actors stayed because they reused some of the location to do the next Corman movie, which was The Undead.
The Undead, yeah.
And it was the main guy, Richard Garland, who played Dr. Dale Brewer, Pamela Duncan, who played Dr. Martha Hunter, and Mel Wells, who was Dr. Jules Devereaux. I guess I should say
French guy.
Colonel Jules Devereaux.
Yeah.
Because they kept calling him Colonel. I'm looking at the the cast is going, it doesn't say Colonel. Who the hell? This is the guy who never takes off his sunglasses, even indoors in the dark.
Oh, I wear my sunglasses indoors so I can see those crabs. I can't.
Well, he took them off for a dramatic statement, and it was.
It's still more competent than anything made by his name suddenly flew out of my head. The Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Ed Wood?
Ed Wood. It's still better than Ed Wood, where he would just have guys who would just nonchalantly play with guns with no concept of gun safety. Okay.
This is true.
But anyway.
I made it a plastic.
But anyway. They start hearing voices, and I'm like, why is this turning into a ghost story in the giant crab movie, which is, by the way, is only 62 minutes long? I'm like, what the heck is going on? And then even though they're like, oh no, it's not ghosts, and I think the science, Dr. Sunglasses makes a comment about
Colonel Sunglasses.
Yeah, Colonel Sunglasses, Colonel Dr. Sunglasses. I'm trying to say, where was it? I wrote the line down.
I'm sorry. No, Devereaux is not Dr. Sunglasses.
Oh, okay. Dr. Colonel Sunglasses, or is it Colonel Dr. Sunglasses?
That's Carson, or is it? Yeah, that's Carson. No. Leslie Bradley.
Oh, okay. This is a paraphrase, but he said, "I don't believe in ghosts, but they're speaking to a dead man's voice and memory." So he's basically like, "Well, that's real." So it basically saying like, "No, there's stranger things going on here." And then I'm like, "Hold on. Here's my prediction." I wrote it in my notes. Prediction: the crabs can absorb the memories of those they eat and mimic their voices. They are intelligent thanks to the radiation. And then I wrote down in all caps, I called it. Sorta.
You also gave me a look.
Yeah.
At that moment.
So my note said, so let me get this straight. These mutant crabs are technically walking bodies of liquid. When they eat their victims' brains, they absorb the electrical impulses of said brains, i.e. memories. I called it.
Except it's interesting because the movie goes on to have one of the characters say that the people who are killed, the brains who are absorbed, are not dead. Their personalities are 100% still intact and working with the crabs because
preservation of the species.
Preservation of the species.
Because apparently morality is not determined by, worldview is not determined by moral absolutes, but by species.
Yes.
Your current species. Because these humans go full tilt traitor.
Yep.
Et tu crabe. I mean, just because they're crabs now, but apparently they are crabs that have no cohesion between their atoms. So they're supposed to be liquid, but they're walking around as solid beings
and making solid crab noises as they walk,
which actually is weirdly unnerving. I have to say, which I think had to have come from them because the ants made unnerving noises.
Except these crabs don't have a vocalization. They only have the sound of their little skittering.
Yeah, it's like.
Whereas the ants had that high pitched squeal that they made.
Yeah. So I called it, and it is up. I can't believe I called it. I was going full tilt absurd with this, and the movie's like, oh, we think on the same wavelength. So there you go. This actually elevates it. This is different. This is not like most 50s atomic monster movies where it is naturalistic. No, this is people who are being devoured by these crabs, and then they become the crabs. Like one of the writers I looked at about this movie said, you've heard of you are what you eat. In this movie, you are what eats you.
Yeah.
I was like, you've got to be kidding me. That's how they're able to speak, and they can project their voices. The liquid thing, I still don't understand because I don't get how they could be solid but not have any cohesion between their atoms. So there's basically liquid. I'm like, why don't they just,
Okay, I was, believe it or not, my wife and I were talking last night because we were watching an episode of Stargate where one of the characters gets out of phase. And so everything is passing through him, except he's still walking on the floor and still leaning against things. which I have always had a problem with whenever you do an out of phase thing in sci-fi. So the theory is that only their points of contact are solid. So when they need to, they keep the points of their crab legs. The touching part is solid. When they lift it up, it's not. When they and as they go, same thing with the claws. They're only solid when they hit you.
And when you shoot at them, the bullets don't work. But they don't like electricity.
No, they don't.
They don't like electricity, which actually makes sense.
Well, it would destabilize their matrix.
It would, destabilize their matrix. So it's wild, and I like it. But to quote Val Kilmer from Batman Forever, it raises too many questions. I wrote all of these down because I will say the concept of the monster eats you and then you become the monster after you have been eaten.
Yes.
Which completely apparently erases and redefines your identity. Like, these are horrifying. If you think about it, these are horrifying concepts, which is why I'm saying I give this movie credit. These are horrifying concepts to think about.
Not even loss of personality, loss of morality.
Loss of morality. Yeah. There's a lot of interesting. Okay. I'm going to look up what, let me see. Well, it's just like it asks a lot of different, it poses questions implicitly. However, if you think about this concept for more than a minute, you have to start asking a lot of questions. Like, what happens if one of these smart crabs eats someone else? Now, that's kind of addressed in the movie because one of them says to the other characters, you will become part of me, which seems to imply that you can have multiple personalities in one crab, although then that starts raising questions like, how does one personality control the crab? Can you switch?
I think the crab itself is already intelligent. So there's the base personality of the crab, which controls all the motor functions and whatnot. Then there's the multiple intellects within the crab brain.
Yeah. Because one of my other questions after is, will two minds share the same crab body, which kind of gets addressed in the movie.
Yep.
And will one replace the other? Again, that's kind of addressed implicitly anyway. And then I said, how many minds can a mutant crab house? Were the crabs dumb when initially mutated? Can a female crab absorb a male brain and vice versa, which also kind of gets addressed implicitly because there's one crab that is actually two, and it's male and female. So we have the tension of, oh my gosh, they make babies, we're screwed.
Yeah.
And then I said, do the crabs absorb the memories of other creatures they eat? So I don't know. They eat a seagull. Is there a seagull brain in there?
Yeah, I just wanted, if that is true, I kind of wanted a smaller version of the crab to have done that, because they can't attack humans at that size because they're tiny. And then to go up to the top of a cliff, say, Windy, I can fly.
And then here's another crazy question then. If one of the smart crabs who has eaten people decides to, for whatever reason, to kill and eat one of his brethren, who has also eaten people and absorbed their minds, does he absorb the minds that the other crab ate?
I'm not sure that they can kill and eat each other since they're made of the same substance. Because
True.
The solid part of his claw would just pass right through the non-solid part of the victim crab.
Yeah. I don't know. Like I said, I just started writing out all of these questions.
So many questions.
It's like I said, it's like also if you squint hard enough, the movie does try to address us. So I give them credit for that. But I was still like writing them out furiously as I'm watching this movie.
But one of the beauties about some of the more interesting Atomic Age monster movies is that they don't try to explain it. They just throw this stuff at the wall and whatever sticks.
Yeah,
makes you go,
it is very pseudoscience.
And there's nothing wrong. I mean,
this is like giant claw levels of ridiculous pseudoscience.
This is not antimatter, but it's worse in some ways. Antimatter, I can almost get behind.
Yeah, this one is just like, oh, this thing about atoms? Because we get a science lesson in this, because that's what most 50s monster movies do. Yes. You get a science lesson. It's like, how this thing works? Yeah. Oh, it's like that, but we're going to apply it to the crabs, so they don't have any cohesion between their atoms. And I'm like,
that's not how this works.
This just proves that American high schools had better science classes than modern American science classes, because the soldier guy's like, I remember this from high school. I was like, what high school did you go to? Oh, wait, this is
back when it was about American excellence. Thank you very much.
What?
back when it was about American excellence. That's what high school was. I mean, they were teaching Latin in 5th grade.
I know. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. But anyway,
so we have let the crab out of the bag.
So we've let the crab out of the bag. So that's where it goes nuts. And at that point, I'm like, wow. So again, I go back to what I said at the beginning of this part of the discussion. I do think this movie has merit because it decides to just go wild. And it is pretty well directed. It's got a lot of tension, some atmosphere. So I give it credit. Now, it has probably the most abrupt ending I've ever seen because the crab has been dead for 5 seconds and the movie ends.
Dun, dun, dun. And it closes down.
Yeah. After somebody literally sacrifices himself to kill the last crab.
And who was it? It was the smartest man on that island. It was the professor.
Yep. So he dies. The last crab dies. Our scientist lady and leading man hug each other. They say, he sacrificed himself for us. Movie over. What?
Yeah.
At least Beast of 20,000 Fathoms gave me a little room to breathe. And we got an ending speech from the scientist in Them.
Now, we were talking about the crabs and the fact they absorb. I had an observation just like at the last minute, just right here, actually. The crabs absorbed memories and intellect of those they ate, as we've already agreed, as well as they were able to transmit their voices through metallic objects,
So I guess they're ventriloquists.
But see, that is so interesting that they were able to vibrate metal in order to produce the voice of the personality housed within them.
Yeah, just say super villain lines like foolish, very foolish.
Yes, but I mean, that part of the science I actually kind of dig because Tesla was talking about transmitting stuff from one piece of metal to another long before this. And so I think that that's an interesting little bit. However, this crab, we know, ate the 2 comic relief sailors that were sleeping on the beach. Right. We know they did, right?
Mm-hmm.
Apparently their brains offered nothing of value because their personalities did not survive the transition. And I think the only thing that the crabs gleaned from their brains is because they were demolitions experts.
Mm.
And so they retained the use of the demolitions. Like, oh yeah, dynamite. We'll just take the dynamite and go blow up more of the island. Because that's kind of what happens. Instead of just earthquakes because of their digging, they started using the dynamite near the end of the movie. Where did they learn how to use dynamite? And the characters even, how do they know how to use dynamite? Well, the sailors that were on the beach are missing. Good point.
He makes a good point. This is kind of like that viral video from a few years ago with a land crab that stole a knife.
This is true.
It was like waving it around. It seemed like it was threatening it. It was really just, I have it in my claw and I'm just moving my claw. But
I don't know what to do with this. Help me.
Stabby, stab. What?
Oh.
I can do that with my claws. But no, I'm going over my notes. So yeah, just to make another connection to some other 50s sci-fi movies, the whole lost change of identity thing actually connects this not only to Atomic Age Creature Features. Well, it not only has connections to Atomic Age Creature Features, I say, but that theme and concept also connects it to Invasion of the Body Snatchers. One guy argues, which is interesting. And he said that it could mean that the nuclear threat could also absorb any of us and transform us into new species, because this was from Apocalypse Then by Bogue, who always talks about these movies in connection to how they handle the nuclear threat.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Well, I like that it's all Body Snatchers was obviously a communism metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
Because supposedly they saw communists as not only anti-God but also anti-personality. Everybody is in their little box and they do their same thing. Well, in here, when the crabs do absorb the personality and then they use that personality to talk through metal, it is devoid of emotion. It is like shed all of their humanity because they don't have the human limbic system, the human emotional drive, the human heart anymore. They are alien. Mm-hmm. And therefore to be feared and threatened. And like you said, when they said foolish, very foolish, there was no emotion. There was no anger. There was no judgment. It was just you made a stupid choice.
Mm-hmm.
It's just information.
Right.
And I can see how that would be terrifying
Mm-hmm.
to an audience of that time period when the Cold War and
I think the coldness of the response is horrifying now.
It was
These are sociopathic crabs, okay?
Now I'm gonna bring in a little bit of history here. I saw this when I was 6 years old.
Mm-hmm.
This was the first time I saw it on the Creature Feature in Los Angeles, KTLA. I saw it in the middle of the day. It's not like I was staying up late to watch this thing because this was a schlocky movie. They would show it at 2:00 in the afternoon.
There is actually daytime horror in this.
Yeah. At 6 in the 70s, I was terrified by this movie. It had nothing to do with the talky human actors because 6-year-olds don't pay attention to that. But every time they went into a cave, there was a giant crab that tried to kill them. And for some reason that lodged in my lizard brain that, well, all caves have giant crabs in them. And when we're driving around in LA, there are underpasses which are very long because they go through, hills and mountains. These are caves, and I'm going to hide and close my eyes and put my hands over my head because there's a giant crab in here. I just know it. I got teased mercilessly by my cousins, by my uncle. My uncle still, to this day, says, driving in Sacramento, or outside of Sacramento where he lives, and he says, we're going through a tunnel. Watch out for crab monsters. I was in my 30s, and he's still teasing me about this. That proves how effective this movie was on a child.
Mm-hmm.
And don't get me wrong, these are piss poor, horribly made, on the cheap, fiberglass monsters.
Okay, let's actually talk about the dang crabs because as we all know, you are the puppet postman. You like being to talk about movies with giant puppets.
I will tell you, blanket statement, I love Roger Corman. I love what he has done for cinema. I love the fact that he has never lost a dime on cinema. I love the fact that he gave so many people their start. He was always glad to let them go. Said, please go, be happy and fruitful and multiply and whatever. Jack Nicholson, to this day, has nothing but good things to say about Roger Corman. That's got to say something because Jack Nicholson is a hard man to work with. And if he's good with Corman, that's something. That being said, I also have a deep fondness for this movie. I unabashedly love this movie while am fully aware of its glaring flaws. And here is that flaw. The biggest flaw this movie has is the monster. They had, as we have discussed, a $70,000 budget, and Corman allocated $400 to it to build this thing. And his regular designer said, I can't do it for that. Find somebody else. Now, the crab is actually a single crab that they film in different positions, whatever. Believe it or not, the Bronson Caverns on the California coast. So they had to lug this thing around. And it was not even though it was fiberglass and wire, it was not particularly light, and it was very cumbersome. There were 2 men inside to make it move.
Oh, 2? I only read about one. Ed Nelson.
There were two. One because it was too wide for one person to do each claw. So they had to have 2 people inside it, and you can actually see their feet when it's on the beach.
Yes, you can see Ed Nelson's feet.
Yeah,
and they had technicians operating the legs with piano
wire. Several puppeteers.
Yeah,
activating both the claws and the legs with piano wire. This offends me to my core as both an actor and as an amateur puppeteer. None of those puppeteers are mentioned anywhere. I cannot find any information about who Corman used, what they were. I'm sure that they were part of his normal cadre of people. They were probably maybe friends and relatives who came in and just worked for a day or so, but there is no information about them at all.
Mm-hmm.
The information I got about the cost of this, because I was thinking maybe $2,000 for this thing. As bad as it looks, maybe I could see it costing a couple grand. It's from a book by D. Earl Worth called Sleaze Creatures, an illustrated guide to obscure Hollywood horror from 1956 to 1959. I went ahead and bought it. I read it, and it's like, yep, you're not telling me anything I don't know except for this one tidbit. But he annotated. He said, yeah, he talked to people who were working on the in the background. He said, yeah, they did not throw money at this thing. because he knew it was going to the drive-in. He knew it was going.
Yeah, it was a drive-in
for
movie.
teenagers.
Yeah, for teenagers.
And one of the
Who
biggest
probably weren't
offenses-
paying attention anyway.
Oh no, they were busy macking on their girlfriends. One of the biggest offenses is that these are crabs, crustaceans, but they have these giant kind of
Human eyes.
they humanized crabs.
Yeah, and because no one's entirely sure who designed this thing. The one name I found was a company called Dice Incorporated, Dice Inc. And the theory from one of the writers I looked at says like they must have been enraptured. I forget exactly how he put it, but basically enraptured by the whole human mind absorbing thing. So they gave them human-like faces, even though Griffith, the screenwriter, in his script, first off, he described them as being more like big black creatures underwater. So it sounds like they were scarier in the script.
Much scarier.
They're skulking around and looking for people.
Which is why that first death is so horrifying, because it happens underwater. Because I'm sorry, I do have my favorite. I wrote something down about that. Not even 4 minutes in before nameless clumsy crewman loses his head. Must be a record. Nobody's even really been introed yet, and the monster takes one out.
And the sad thing is, one of my bosses back on Monster Island, that's probably his favorite part.
You're talking about Virus, aren't you?
Yes. Apparently he's gotten dumber since the 60s. He's weirdly obsessed with decapitations.
Well, he is
his octopoidal fury. He reminds us of that every day.
Yeah. Well.
In fact, every time I get an email from it, all it says is fear my octopoidal fury, humans, off with your head.
Now,
and in all caps, which is a little astonishing that he can type with tentacles, but
maybe he has a minion do it for him.
Yeah, who knows at this point? But anyway,
the two people inside the crab, however, both of which were technically uncredited, Ed Nelson, you've already pointed out, and Beach Dickerson.
Yeah.
Beach Dickerson.
How do you get a name like Beach?
I think it's great. It's a great name. It's a great 1950s, like a beach movie name.
It does sound like a beach. He sounds like he should be the villain in a beach movie. Just
Beach Monster.
His name is literally Beach Dickerson. Okay.
And the first voice that we hear coming out of, well, not coming out, but being transmitted from a crab, is none of the actors. It's none of the ones that we have seen. It is from the previous expedition. A professor or doctor named McLean, and that was voiced by David Arvidon. And it was like maybe 3 or 4 lines.
Yeah,
because he talks directly to Martha. And again, the crab has a name. Never spoken, but the crab had a name. It's Hoolar, Hoolar, and that's David Arvidon voiced that part. It's ridiculous.
I just realized there's a freaking connection to Batman v Superman because they have to save Martha from a monster.
Well,
yeah, Jimmy, I think I'm going to meme that.
To be honest, she is actually the least, the person who is in the least amount of danger in this entire movie.
Which is also true.
And this woman is supposedly a scientist. Yes, they didn't downplay her contributions, but the only real contribution she had as a biologist, it was the fact that she looked at a picture of one of the crabs. She says, "Is this the one you killed?" And they said, "No, that's the other one that was attacking when we were running away." He says, "Well, this one's pregnant."
Yes.
Now, that's a huge reveal that not only are they mutants, one of them was female, still alive, and talks with a male voice. Because, I mean, this is topical. They are liquid atoms, right? Whatever. Gender fluidity. Yes, gender fluidity in an atomic horror movie. Yeah. Oh, it's like couple levels right there. Oh God, I didn't even think about that till just now.
Wow. It's you're like right before you were going to say
about myself.
Corman was ahead of his time.
Anyway, So yes, the gender fluid surviving crab is pregnant, going to give birth, and it does not seem to have the proper weight for these male scientists. She points out a salient point. Dude, more of them. And they go, oh, we should probably, do something about that. It's like,
yeah. The acting in the second half of the movie is they are surprisingly calm for everything that's going on. Like, as weird and ridiculous and wild as this movie gets, they're like, oh yeah, talking crabs. Then they're gonna have babies and kill us all. Okay, we better kill them first. Yeah.
I was going to point out the whole lack of emotion from some of the actors, specifically Richard Garland, who plays Dr. Dale Brewer, the supposed hero of this thing. I'm sorry, we all know the hero is Hank Chapman, the professor from Gilligan's Island, but that's beside the point. Now, Dale Brewer pretty much just did Westerns in the 50s, and Westerns don't call for a lot of emoting, especially from the 50s. He also did 19 episodes of Lassie. Not to denigrate the dog. The dog was the best actor on that show. We all know that. And, there's always Timmy, but.
Well, because he keeps falling in the well.
Always needing help.
How did, like all the children saved by dogs in movies not get the moniker Timmy like we call kids in Tokusatsu?
Now, this will come up later. The fact that the main actor here was a regular on, or at least a semi-regular for 19 episodes from the original Lassie. Keep that in mind, folks, because it's going to come back in a different form. But his lack of emotion, I felt, kind of contributed to the way his fiancée, Martha, was kind of looking at Hank. And interestingly enough, Hank has one of the best lines. Actually, he's got a couple of great lines, but this is my favorite. It's right at the beginning. The sailors are asking him if he's a scientist too, and he says, I'm no scientist. I'm a technician and a handyman.
Mm.
So he's a working guy. He's like, a staff sergeant. Yet, right after they ask him that, he gives a concise exposition of who everyone is, what their specialty is, why they are on this island.
I think he's reading the character list in the script.
It is pitch perfect. It's like, it has been 10 minutes since the movie started. Guy's lost his head. We've had a voiceover given a scripture reading. We've had an earthquake, which is standard simulation earthquake, shake the camera. But then you have the professor, who's just a handyman, give this nice little intro without, exposition, without it sounding awkward. Because these sailors don't know who these people are. They just, okay, we're bringing a bunch of scientists to the island. It's like, no. That guy's the top in his field. That guy's the top in his field. And he goes down the line. It's like, Dr. Weigand is a nuclear physicist. Martha's a biologist. Her fiance Dale is a biologist. Dr. Devereaux, the French guy, is a botanist. Says, these are people we would need on this island to determine if radiation is having any effect on us. And I thought, that's actually and he delivers it well. It doesn't sound like it's staged or, awkwardly thrust into the dialogue. It's actually quite good.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting because I was going over my notes here and I found a quotation from Corman about how the script was put together and what he thinks it made the movie successful. And he said, quote, however, I do think a lot of its popularity had to do with the construction of the plotline. I've always believed that in horror and science fiction films, too much time is usually spent explaining the characters in depth and developing various subplots. Genre audiences really come to these movies for their science fiction elements or their shock value. Of course, they want to understand the characters and want to empathize with them all in order to share the emotions present, but they don't wish to do that at the expense of other aspects of the picture.
I really can't disagree with that. It's just that every little bit of character business we get adds to that very bare bones explanation. I mean, we knew Dr. Weigand is the guy with the sunglasses. He's called Colonel throughout the whole thing, so he's obviously with the military. But Weigand is a German name, and he kind of has a German
I called
accent.
him in my notes. Yeah, in my notes, he's Dr. German.
And Dr. Devereaux, obviously French, who we helped liberate from the Germans, which is a very interesting dynamic going on with this. I saw it. I kind of went, do I really want to go in depth and comment on what this could possibly be saying about the Allies in Europe? Just 10 years previous, I don't think I want to get in there.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting because I mean, you could point to some similar things that have happened in other movies too. With
but
that,
back to the lack of emotion when they're in the house and it's just Dale and Martha, and they hear a crashing going on in the workroom. He opens the door and he says, "I'm going to go check the room." Martha says, "I'll come with you." He says, "No," and he goes in. He closes the door behind him. There is no expression on his face, no fear, no surprise, no nothing. As a giant claw comes crashing through the wall, he is having
a different giant claw.
Yeah, no Bernice. A giant crab claw, a Red Lobster special. Boom, comes in, starts messing stuff around. He then just, again, no expression on his face, no realization. Oh my God, I'm going to die. Oh, what the hell is this thing? Oh, this is terrible. He just leaves and goes, avoids it and goes back out, closes the door. And then, of course, they hear crash, bang, boom, and then nothing for a while.
Yeah, clearly he does not have cabarophobia.
I'm wondering if he is even in this movie as much as he doesn't emote. It's just, there's nothing to him. I feel bad for the guy because, like, are you a sociopath? Is that what the problem is here?
Well, like I said, doesn't have cabarophobia.
Which
fear of crabs.
Well, no, that's Hank. Professor Hank, because Professor Hank, what's the first thing he does when they get on the island? He throws a rock at some crabs on the beach. I hate them, is what he says.
You're just making them angry now.
That angries up my blood. But yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I know. The radio is dismantled.
Because somehow that giant claw, not to be confused with Crazy Bernice, could sever something that small.
And not just severed.
Each wire is such precision.
Each wire is pulled out and severed, and the little cathode ray tubes or whatever they're using for power
cut in half so precisely. I'm like, with those, and then when we see a guy who actually gets caught by the crab and it's going for his head, and it's just kind of like awkwardly, it's like,
yeah,
the crab comes up, like that. And I'm like,
I'm sorry, that.
Sure. They totally had the precision and the motor skills and everything. That's one of my, to cut this in half. It should be noted, like these puppets. We were talking. I should have brought this up. The puppets, if you can get past the ridiculous faces,
they are awkward.
This is clearly 10 years before Son of Godzilla, when when Sadamasa Arakawa and the Subaraya guys made Son of Godzilla, and they had the Kamakuruses and Kumonga, and they look amazing. They had lots of technicians operating all of the limbs for those things, and they look great. There's still a little bit of lightness to it, but they're articulated and wonderful. And this one, those legs barely move, and the crabs look like they just kind of float.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and the manipulator claws, they should be fast. They should be, in there grabbing stuff. Actually, one of my favorite scenes, because of how ridiculous it is Frenchman Devereaux is leaving his sickbed. He has lost his hand due to a rock falling on it.
Oh my gosh!
Bizarre.
They cut his hand off. You want to talk about this movie? Like I said, this movie is weirdly shocking for the 50s.
And it was not
decapitations and loss of limbs.
And yeah, he loses his hand. He loses it right at the gold watch too, because the watch comes off with it. And again, that part of it is he goes down. He loses his hands for a falling rock, and I'm sorry, these characters got to be made of glass if they break that easily. But his scream of pain was good acting. But then he is followed by the worst instant faint ever. Ah!
Yeah, dude, you're messing up your microphone. What the heck?
But I have a commercial that we need to input. He said, "Instant faint. When you've got nothing more to contribute to the story, instant faint. One whiff and you're down for the count."
Well, there you go.
But yeah, he gets called out by one of the voices from the crab, and so he gets. I think it's Dr. Weigand, the nuclear physicist. His voice is calling him out and saying, "Oh, I'm over here. I'm fine. I got hurt." Because remember they were looking for him because he broke his leg or something.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, he was eaten, but. Devereaux leaves. He goes walking along the ridge of the thing, and he's following the disembodied voice to the edge of the sinkhole that had happened on the island. He says, "Where are you?" And out of nowhere, giant claw, which, I'm sorry, if there was a giant crab that close enough to grab him by the crab, he should have seen it. No matter how dark it was, he would have felt a presence there. And the claw comes out of nowhere, grabs his throat. Right here.
I'll tell you, I need to make a GIF of that and just caption it ninja crab.
Like, well, there you go. There's your other meme. And yeah, they now I was going to have a nice big shout out when he's delirious in bed before they give him the sedation after his hand gets cut off. They have tended him. They've done the best they can with what little medical resources they've got on the island. He's in his bed. He says thank you to Martha because, of course, the woman, this is 1950, she has to be the one to nursemaid him, even though she's a biologist with a degree. He says thank you.
It could be human biology. She knows how to fix
things. It would be a different movie if she was there investigating the radiation on human biology.
That's the Amazing Colossal Man.
He says he starts speaking French to her. Now, my wife knows French.
You told me about this before we went on the air.
And she sat there. She says, "Oh, I got the." He says, "Thank you, madame," and then I would like mumble, mumble, garble, garble, blah. Now, we both tried 2 separate translate things on our phones to try and understand. It would not give us anything about what he was saying. And I was going to come in here like, I've got some great information that nobody else has because it's nowhere in the script. You can't find it anywhere, what he says. But I'm sorry, I don't have the rest of his French statement. All I have is thank you, madame. I would like something. We can maybe extrapolate. Maybe he wants a ham sandwich. Maybe he would like to have his hand back. Maybe he would like her to join him in bed. He is French. I mean, I don't know. It's very confused.
It would be a very strange time to ask for that, but then again, he did just lose his hand, and he's very
loss
delirious.
Of blood and sedation. I'm sure they used morphine, so
Yeah, silly things are going to come out of his mouth because, of course, he is French.
Yeah. So anyway,
and then later on, we have a French accent coming out of one of the crabs.
And that yes, but I think that is quite good because nothing. The French are known to eat exotic parts of animals, and a crab is almost 100% exotic because all we eat is the claws. So
this is true.
Those giant claws, big as a battleship.
Yeah, but I don't have the explosion on my board anymore.
You can fix it in post.
Oh. Yeah. Sorry, Michael. Actually, not sorry.
Oh no.
Oh, always to pester Michael.
I take that back. There was also one other person, Dr. James, who is a geologist.
Oh.
A geologist played by Richard Cutting. James Carson.
Mm.
He's a geologist, right? There's this pit, this sinkhole that opens up on the island, and he decides to rappel down it by himself.
Because?
Now, the nuclear physicist has told him, don't do that. It's dangerous. Wait till morning. He says, baloney. I'm going to do this. Against all safety measures, he rappels into a sinkhole. I mean, have these people never heard of OSHA? Really, dude? It's just, oh God, so much stupidity in this movie. I mean, yes, okay, they were outclassed by, mutant telepathic crabs. Well, not telepathic. Talking crabs. Mutant talking crabs. Who absorb personalities. I get it. They're outclassed. Yeah. They're digging the island. They're sinking it, making less and less room for the humans to escape them. All that means, and they have dynamite. What does a crab need with dynamite? I don't know, but they have it.
What does a crab need with a knife?
What does God need with a starship?
As the viral video showed us.
What does God need with a starship? To bring in Star Trek, because there's always got to be a Star Trek reference.
We'll just add that to the list of of questions that we have.
Have you seen my water bottle?
Yes, I love it.
Anyway, now I did like going back to the radio getting smashed and them looking at they've all been cut as if by precision precision tools. It's like, okay, giant. Maybe they had smaller manipulator claws. Scorpions don't have real mouth parts. They have little claws to grind up their food. Maybe the same thing with these crabs is they have smaller manipulators that they could do we never see them. They're never mentioned. They didn't have the budget for it. They just weren't thinking that far ahead. I don't know.
I mean, where we have to assume they have mouths because they eat people.
and when they actually go in and see Hula right before they kill them, it's asleep and it's snoring. It's a crab. It has gills, not lungs. Doesn't have a larynx. Doesn't have an esophagus. Where is that snoring?
I mean, it's a
from?
land crab.
It doesn't matter. Even land crabs don't have lungs, man. This is.
It's Hular, as Jimmy said, not hula. Now I just have this picture of a crab.
You know what? We got to find a gif of a crab in a hula skirt.
I'm sure it's out there. It's the internet.
Anyway, but Doc,
you go ahead and Google hula crab, okay?
But Professor Hank is looking at it. Remember, he's the handyman. He's the guy who puts stuff back together. He's a technician. He says, we need a whole new outfit from the bottom up. Devereaux says, do you have the pots enough to build a new one? He says, I don't know. Of course you do. You're the professor. Coconuts, bamboo, palm leaves. Get it done. Dude, simple. Come on, professor. You're better than this. Get on the ball. I feel better. I had to get that out of my system. I mean, I stand for the professor. I think he got the short end on Gilligan's Island. He gets the short end here. He sacrificed himself, doesn't get the girl. What the hell? Come on, dude. Blue-collar workers are crapped on in this movie.
Oh, my gosh. Well, the question becomes, I mean, are postmen considered blue or white-collar?
We're paid like, well, not paid like white-collar. White-collar are, lawyers and doctors and whatnot. So I guess we are blue-collar. And we technically do wear blue collars. So
that is true.
Postal blues.
That is true. Well, anyway, we do have one other movie to talk about. Okay, before we get to the next movie, Jimmy informed me that he did, in fact, Google hula crab and discovered that there is such a thing as a crab hula.
That's fascinating information, Jimmy. Thank you for that.
Yeah, have fun with that in your blog, and I guess you can show us those results after we're done here. Now, I don't expect the segment on this movie to take nearly as long because since Crab Monsters was a Corman movie, there's gobs of information for it. In fact, if the board would give me the money, I would get that out of print Blu-ray, and you could hear a whole commentary.
I would love to hear
on this film from film historians. So, and there's plenty of information about this thing. If as you'll see in the in the show notes on MonsterIslandFilmVault.com. This movie, on the other hand, has basically nothing. So I just, like, the lion's share of my research was on the Corman movie, was on Corman's Crabs, as I call it. Because this one has basically nothing. I am going to let you explain the background on this because there is so much nothing on it.
As I said before, I learned about this through Vintage Video and Patrick O'Reilly. Filmed in 1980, maybe the cusp was 1979, 1980, on location in Virginia Key, Florida. It tells the story of a researcher trying to increase the size and the growth rate of crabs. And they have found that the warmer the water is, the faster they grow and their maturation cycle increases. Interesting because, they get like double their size in the last couple of years. Yeah, that's great. There is a nuclear power plant somewhere down the coast that had an accident, supposedly. So there's the threat of radioactivity flowing in there. But that's a red herring because it ends up being just a tidal wave of hot water and waste. Now, this is constant. We know that power plants, nuclear, spew out their excess hot water. And they're doing it right into the ocean because this is the late 1970s, early 80s. And so the crabs are getting a little bigger and a little more aggressive. And danger ensues in this tiny community, which in Florida, which apparently doesn't have a name. It's like a tiny little village where everybody knows everybody. There's a crab
on an island.
Yeah, the Key, the Virginia Key, and it's called. What is the shack called? It's called the Half Shell, because if you're not drinking your life away on this island, you are fishing, probably also for crabs. And people start going missing. People start ending up hurt. Everybody's losing their dog. And yes, I hate to tell you this. According to the site, does the dog die? The dog dies. I'm sorry. It's a cute little kind of, border collie-ish thing that does not get out of the way of trucks. And it dies. But that's beside it. Not because of the truck. That's the crab. So, yeah. It's crabs attacking. It's a classic, 1970s Nature Strikes Back movie. Except at the end, there is a giant surprise. And I'm going to leave it there.
Yeah.
Because...
we'll leave it there. Like I said, there is
virtually nothing on this.
Virtually nothing on this. The only background information I can find, if I Google this movie, most of what I find are reviews and its IMDb page. It does not have a Wikipedia page. And you can't find, say, a trailer for it on YouTube. You can't even find the whole movie on YouTube. You can find a clip, one clip of it. That on YouTube. That is how this thing is obscure. This might be the most, next to maybe Zillafoot,
but that's modern.
This might be the most obscure movie we have covered on here.
And there is a reason.
And the Zillafoot only beats it because it's technically a Z-grade indie film.
Usually in a podcast, you give in the Vintage Video podcast, they give you the distributor, who distributed the movie, where it was shown. They couldn't do that. There's no distributor because it was made and it was shelved immediately.
Yep. They couldn't find a distributor. It was made in 1980. Yep. It didn't get a distributor. Didn't see the light of day until 1984 when it was put on to late night television, which is why it's interesting. That's one of the things that throws me off when I was watching this, because it's in widescreen like a proper movie, but good grief, does it feel like a TV movie?
It does.
It's shot like a TV movie. The acting is decent, but it feels like everything about it other than the widescreen screams TV movie to me. And by the way, when it was shown on late night TV, it had a different title.
Yes, Night of the Claw.
Night of the Claw, which is actually at least a little more interesting than this. I think it also was released under the title Giant Claw.
Yes, and Giant Claw. I think that was the Canadian title.
Yeah. The screenplay, this is like all the background I can find on this thing. The screenplay was written by Jack Cowden, I hope I said that right, and Riku Browning, who famously was the suit actor for the Gill Man underwater in Creature from the Black Lagoon, but only underwater. And they both made family-friendly movies and TV shows, most famously Flipper.
Jack Cowden created Flipper, and that is the link back to the actor who was in Lassie. There you go. Lassie and Flipper in the same podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a family-friendly joy for you tonight.
Yeah. He also made a movie in 1973 called Salty.
Yeah.
That I'm sure was about a lot of angry teenagers and millennials. But here's the crazy thing. We talked about the budget for the Corman movie. This was actually a more expensive movie. Indeed. And that freaking puppet.
I love this puppet.
Oh gosh. Okay. Maybe I should calculate the inflation on this too. This was made 1980 for $4 million. Okay. Let's crunch the numbers on this. $4 million. Which, oh wait, nope. I gotta fix. Let me see.
Today's money.
So $4 million, which would be basically $14.7 million.
That's a nice little indie film. One step above, bare bones indie.
Yeah. Here's the crazy part. The puppet was a quarter of the budget.
And you know what?
It cost $1 million to make. 400 versus 1 million. That puppet in modern day money was $3.68 million.
And I have to say this, it shows this puppet looks like a crab. It is actuated
unlike the original movie, because we talked about the human face is not. The script said that it had proper crab eyes,
and Corman changed it
in the Corman movie. This actually has the eyes on the stalks like a proper crab. But there's but the funny thing is, just like in the Corman movie, although the Corman movie had one puppet that had passed off as two, this one just has one big one. And lots and lots of shots
of live
of
crabs.
regular land crabs doing regular land crab things that it's attempting to use to create atmosphere and suspense. But otherwise, I'm just like, why are you padding this with crab?
Now, interestingly, the giant crab was fabricated by Glenn Robinson. I did find out that much. This man also worked. He is apparently an FX whiz. He worked on King Kong 76, Logan's Run, and Flash Gordon. This man has
Flash.
He has a pedigree to him, and it shows. This giant crab, you don't see the full thing until the very end when it's on Main Street in this village. It is extremely large.
It is huge,
man. It stands about 12 feet
I think
tall.
I read, the back of the DVD says that the crab shell is 8 feet long. And I'm like, well, that doesn't sound all that. Well, it just says the crab's 8 feet wide. I'm like, oh, that doesn't sound that impressive. And they're like, nope, that's the shell.
That's the shell.
Everything.
Because it's gigantic.
It
stands about 12 feet off the ground. Each leg is long and it's articulated. Again, I have no information on who actually puppeteered this giant beast. I'm sure it was stagehands, but it behaves in a much more naturalistic way. I will give it that.
Yeah. Now it still roars like crazy, just like in the Corman crabs. I'm like,
I know it hurts because it's 1980 and they still haven't figured out that things with lungs don't know how to roar.
Yeah, but this was directed and co-written by a guy named Hernan Cardenas. This is the only movie ever made. He faded into obscurity along with this movie right after that. Yep. It stars the likes of Robert Lansing, who was also, this is not his first killer animal movie. He was also in Empire of the Ants and The Nest.
No, not only
and he plays Moody the barkeep.
Yep. Oh, and he's got an accent throughout the entire thing. Robert Lansing, who I've kind of follow the little stuff that he does or has done in the past, and guy has one facial expression, generally speaking.
That facial expression is get off my lawn.
It is very much a scowl. It has always been there. And some of you who like Star Trek may remember him as Gary Seven from the original series.
That's true.
Where his assistant was Terry Garr. Love it. He was also in 1959's 4D Man, where he is able to pass through objects, but it ages him, and so he has to kill people to absorb their energy to get. Anyway,
he was also in The Twilight Zone, along with co-star Barry Nelson.
2 separate episodes, but yes.
2 separate episodes in the 5th season. Yep. It was The Long Morrow and The Stopover in a Quiet Town, and they both have to do with isolation.
Yep. And he probably would never, I mean, he's gone now, but he would probably not want to be remembered for this, but in 1983-84, he was in all 13 episodes of the really bad sci-fi television series Automan, which you look it up, folks. It's a gem. It came out the same time that Manimal did. They were
no. Yeah.
Anyway,
and now so the screenwriter Riku Browning, well, the co-screenwriter, because Mr. Cardenas was like, there was also a Colby Cardenas who was a producer on this,
and who also apparently contributed.
We don't know if they're brothers or husband and wife or siblings.
We have no information. There's
cousins.
There's nothing.
We don't know. And I just wonder are they related to Steve? That's for all you Power Ranger fans out there. You're welcome, Michael. But Riku. Here's another connection. Here's another thing it has in common. Okay. With the first movie we talked about, it too has a limited run Blu-ray.
Why?
This one had 1,200 as opposed to 1,000. So apparently this thing is worthy of 200 more copies than the freaking Roger Corman movie that actually has marquee value.
And you cannot,
because it's Roger freaking Corman.
You cannot find the Blu-ray of Island Claws anywhere.
Go figure. Because I wanted to see if there was a Blu-ray and I couldn't find a dang thing. I didn't even know it existed until I read one of the reviews. And this guy said, "Oh yeah, there's an interview with Browning on the Blu-ray, the limited run Blu-ray." But he said after 2 minutes he stops talking about Island Claws because he says he had no involvement with the movie other than writing the screenplay, and he hasn't even seen it. Yeah. Which is funny because the guy who wrote Attack of the Crab Monsters actually said he wrote that script really fast and never did any revisions. So I guess there's another thing they sort of have in common. Yeah. So
well, let's give a rundown of kind of what I mean. There's so many weird red herrings in this movie.
Yeah, it's nuts because it wants to be a throwback to the 50s, but it also wants to be the 80s.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, this was 1980. This was the year after 3 Mile Island. I looked it up.
Yep.
It's the year after 3 Mile Island. So it was that, it was like in that waning period where radiation was still kind of relevant. You could use it as a plot device. But, most writers were slowly getting away from it.
And it was coming out of the Nature Strikes Back, Animals Attack kind of movies like Grizzly and Bats and, Devil Bat, all these movies that had to do with nature just saying, you know what, we're fed up with you humans. The Day of the Animals is another great one from 1977. So it's coming out of that thing. So in the beginning, it's just land crabs who give a bicyclist a scare and then crawl all over. And then she gets, of course, grabbed by a giant claw, again, big as a battleship. And
you're never going to get
no,
away
I'm not.
From that,
I'm going to keep using it. Anyway,
yeah.
So there's that.
And then we have a whole thing where there's a news report on a nuclear power plant, and they try to make, and then they have a whole scene because there's the pretty reporter lady who, it becomes a love interest for Pete, one of our main characters, Mr. Handsome,
Pete Adams,
the handsome leading man.
This was his first movie,
and
Steve Hanks is the actor, and that was his first movie.
Right. And so I think her dad runs the power plant, and they have a whole scene together where she's like, "Hey Dad, you think the stuff from the plant's gonna mess anything up?" He's like, no, it'll be fine. Trust me. Like there's this whole scene about that. And then in a bit of nice subtle acting, which there were several instances of it, I have to give the movie credit for it, where he kind of knowingly looks away and his happy expression just completely shifts like, "Oh yeah, no, that's good."
But radiation,
that was a lie.
Radiation is really never brought up after that.
But it's never brought up, and then it becomes genetics. Yeah. The ultimate cause, even though I guess it's supposed to be implied that
it's the hot
maybe the stuff from the plant made the smaller crabs a little bigger, more aggressive, and then the growth hormone that the other scientists who were doing it to try to solve world hunger because
that's what biologists
crab meat will solve world hunger.
That's what biologists do is they grow crabs for world hunger.
Yeah, go figure. Yeah, there's a T-shirt for you. Grow crabs for world hunger.
No,
to solve world hunger.
I'm sure Corman's Crab Shack is gonna start offering those.
Yeah, there you go. That's for Corman's Crab Shack. But so I guess it's supposed to be. It's actually them. So I guess it's supposed to be a combination. Like maybe they found one of the irradiated crabs and gave it the growth hormone, and it's like, ha! I'm bigger. I'm as big as a battleship. Now a very tiny battleship.
It's more of a
actually
more of a schooner or maybe a dinghy. But I'm huge
like
for
that.
A crab.
It's like he's big, and I don't know. It's a little all over the place. My general impression, I had never heard of this until you told me about it.
Likewise.
Funny enough, I have a book here, Keep Watching the Skies by Bill Warren, who mentions this movie in passing when talking about Attack of the Crab Monsters.
Oh my God, are you kidding? That's
and
awesome.
I'm like, oh my gosh, someone actually acknowledged it in connection to the Corman movie.
I had no idea. I have a sitting in my Amazon queue waiting for me to pick it up for.
There's 2 volumes.
Right. Well,
so I'm like, he actually mentioned it in passing, and I think there was one of the reviews had a long list of, it said like 50s movies that it's kind of like, and it did say, oh yeah, and Attack of the Crab Monsters, which it really is like,
wow.
And as I was watching it, I was noticing some similarities between the movies. They did the sound effect thing with the same kind of sound effects.
Things, yeah.
Yeah, we get the big one at the end, and and it's always we get more action from the smaller ones, admittedly, but the crabs are attacking people and trying to kill them, and it takes place on an island. There's some connection to radiation, but other than some of these surface level things, it's really its own movie, and you can't really call it a remake. No. It's just very similar because it's the probably only other movie where it's not the only movie with giant crabs, but it's the only other one where they're the main focus. probably at this point, because they've shown up in some other
there's
movies.
Also, you were talking about how this movie is at a transition point for doing radiation as the big MacGuffin and genetics becoming the new MacGuffin. You also have, which is very prevalent in the 70s movies, there's a humanistic message with the Haitian refugees.
Right.
It serves no purpose except to rile up the blood of the drunks in the half shell.
Right.
To get them to go out.
Which every time I saw that, I had to remind myself, this is not Ninja Turtles.
Because really,
I'm showing my age a little bit there. What my generation?
Because these are not the heroes in the half shell. They are
the heroes in the half shell. They're like, what does that even mean? And I actually had to look it up. It's like, it means inexpensive. Yeah. So I guess that means Corman made his movie on the half shell.
Bazinga. Now there is a couple of things I'd like to point out. Again, there are three dogs actually in the movie. One belongs to hero Robert Lansing, aka Moody, who is the owner and proprietor of the half shell, who is an alcoholic, a raging alcoholic throughout the entire thing, which I feel is interesting that it's accepted and never addressed, and there's no like social commentary about it other than finding his dog having been lacerated by one of these giant crabs and him having no idea how it happened. The men who had been in the half shell had been out looking for the Haitians, hadn't found them all night, see him coming in with his dog who is dying, and they immediately forget about the Haitians. No, we got to save your dog. And they get him in, gets in the truck. He can't get his truck started. And then they just say, it's too late. He's gone, man.
Yeah. The Haitians are just there to be another red herring.
Yeah, and
because there's some mild racism that gets riled up where they're like, oh, I bet they're the ones killing these people because they came across this, and this was a thing for a while in the 80s and 90s. These people who, although I think it was more from Cuba, like Edwin Gonzalez. Remember Edwin Gonzalez?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it was this thing where there were these people, there's a big thing in the United States now about people crossing the U.S.-Mexico border illegally. This was at a point where these people were escaping the Caribbean islands in boats and coming to Florida. And that was a major issue for a long time.
Always
so this is commentating on it, but only so they could use these people as red herrings.
So you have two red herrings in this movie, one of which is nuclear power, one of which was, Haitian refugees. It's like, what's going on in this movie? Yeah,
there's a lot that's crammed into this. And the funny thing is that whole subplot with, I say mild racism, because as soon as these people find out, one of the refugees has a little daughter who got attacked by one of the crabs and now she needs medical attention, they're like, okay, I forgot I'm racist. And then they just help the little girl, which I'm like, okay, that's cool, but what?
I think it's interesting. I don't think it's necessarily racism. I think it's like almost nationalism. Like, don't come into our country unless you're going to come in the right way.
Maybe, but they're just like, they came to they're just assuming that they're the ones doing voodoo and killing people.
I'll give you that.
Voodoo is a thing in Haiti.
This is true.
That is true.
It is a religion. It's actually a recognized religion by the United States too.
Yeah.
And it's not.
So I could understand why they would make that. It's still highly presumptive.
But it's only the one loudmouth in the bar who gets everybody else riled up about it. And they go out and they're going, yeah, this isn't going to go anywhere. Let's see how he screws up. It's really
basically,
there's nothing to do on this island when you're not fishing. And so this is entertainment.
Except get drunk.
Right.
And do crab
races. Crab races. Yes.
Hermit crab races. When I saw that, it's like, is that a thing you do in bars in Florida?
In the Keys in 1979, 1980, when you got nothing better to do on a Saturday night? I'm sure that's what it is.
For those who don't know, basically what they did is they had these little hermit crabs, or maybe, I don't know, the size of a silver dollar. And they would make a little circle on a table, in the center of a table. They would put them in there, and then they make a bigger circle on the, closer to the edge of the table. And then they let them go, and whichever one leaves the smaller circle and crosses the bigger circle first is the winner, and they place bets on
$50.
Like,
$50 in 1980 was a lot of money. I remember.
Yeah, and I'm just like, what in the frick? Like, I am getting cultured. I'm too young, and I didn't live in Florida. No. I don't know what any of this is.
It's like
these are Floridian rednecks. That's what these are.
This is a less lethal version of cockfighting. It's something to pass the time, something to bet on. They had a radio, but I don't remember seeing a television anywhere. So it's not like they're getting sports network anywhere. Of course, this is before cable.
Yeah.
So it's like a year before MTV started. So, I think HBO home box office was just in its infancy, and you could see A Star Is Born and Goldfinger over and over on repeat.
And porn.
That was Cinemax.
Oh, okay.
Not home box office. You paid extra.
Yeah, that's true. HBO had a little more dignity than
they
that.
used to, yes.
Yeah, but here's the thing. We're making this sound like it's pretty ridiculous, but I'm going to be honest with you. When I finished it, I'm like, okay, technically the script is better than the Corman movie.
Yes.
I would say the acting overall is better than the Corman movie.
Yes.
I might even make the argument that the effects are better than the Corman movie.
No, there is no doubt about it. The effects are better than the Corman movie.
Yeah, even though that puppet is so huge it can barely move. Most of the terror from that thing is because they do a lot of close-ups, and they can make it move a little bit, and it's so huge that it's scary. But they give you a nice. They're trying to hide how inarticulate this puppet is with close-ups and very. If they have wider shots, they don't linger.
They give you one after it's dead, a nice aerial shot, a crane shot, where you get to see how big this thing actually is.
Yeah, it's gigantic.
The entire street of this one road town, and it is massive. And
right,
I love it just for that. They gave us a full look at it, and it looks like a crab. It looks like an actual crab.
It really does look like a crab. But here's the problem. Because it's just competent enough, it's faded into obscurity. It doesn't have the marquee value of Attack of the Crab Monsters with Corman.
The ridiculousness of the Corman.
Yeah, it's not as wild. It's not as wild or outlandish as Crab Monsters.
And its special effects and storyline and actors aren't as good as later movies would be.
Yeah, but like I said, because it has just enough competence, it probably didn't get a cult following for being so bad it's good, and it's not good enough to be remembered.
And if it only had that one showing on television, people in my generation would have seen it, but it would have faded into obscurity with all the other stuff that got repeat viewings.
Right. So that's, like I said, that's the problem. Because it's just competent enough, it's not going to get the attention of any of those two kinds of film fans. The ones who will love it ironically because it's so bad it's good, and those who will genuinely like it because they think it's a decent movie. It's not decent enough to be remembered.
But
or bad enough to be remembered.
For the listeners, for fans of kaiju movies, for fans of extremely rare and hard to find kaiju movies, this is available on DVD, on Amazon. It's only like $15, if that,
something like that, and it's a DVR. It's a DVD-R that has a menu, but no FBI warning. Like you stick it in, pop, and the menu comes up, and there's only one thing on the menu, which is just play movie. It does have a screenshot of the crabs on the beach, and it plays the theme song that sounds like it should be in It's a Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
But yeah, and you have to bother to hit the button to make it play, but then hilariously, there are no chapter breaks. You hit the skip chapter button on the thing, it will just go to the menu. And
I will all this being said, and we sound like we're ripping on it. We are kind of, because that's kind of what we do. But I encourage all of you to just get it for your. If you want to see it for free, YouTube. You can see it on YouTube. I did it one night on my second viewing just to be able to refresh my memory. Watch it. Judge for yourself. Robert Lansing is actually quite good. I mean, he gives a typical Robert Lansing performance, but he's quite good. Barry Nelson, I am so mad that they didn't have those two power hitters in the same scene at all. He's also quite good as the scientist at the beginning of the movie. And then he dies ignominiously by rolling his truck and exploding.
Yeah, he had a very unceremonious death, even though he was supposed to be a big deal.
Yeah, I felt really bad.
Also, I'd like to point out that Moody, for at least half of this movie, is cosplaying Han Solo.
Kind of, yeah.
Because that's what it looked like. Also, this was made by Island Claws Productions.
A fly-by-night outfit, if I've ever heard of one.
And I wrote in my notes, these credits are brought to you by Antagonized Land Crabs. Because I'm pretty sure that's all they did. Like, they're filming the land crabs. I'm sure they just have not stagehands, but they have gaffers who are just always like, just pester them, make them move. Kind of like that's what's his name had to do, and he said it was really funny when he was doing the underwater scenes. Griffith,
Yes,
for the underwater scenes for
crabs.
Corman's crabs. He said that the cinematographer his name was Crosby, who ended up becoming very famous later on. Again, the school of Corman. He's like just banging on the side of the aquarium to try to get the
fish to do something.
Yeah.
Okay.
So correction, it's Dario and Hernan Cardenas. Okay. I was wrong. Yeah.
Anyway,
and yeah,
I do have.
I also was like, I just started because there's so little on this movie. I'm just going to go off of my notes. So I had like speaking paragraph into tape recorder. Is that the beginning or the end?
I have one great big observation, and this was a problem. We all know that the ASPCA got on Hollywood big time, pretty much after what was happening with all the sword and sandal stuff from the 30s, 40s, and 50s, the Westerns, all the animal abuse that they were seeing. They immediately started putting a stop to that. Now, there was an animal handler in this movie. Her name was Brenda Watt. There were 3 dogs, 2 of which disappear, and they're never seen from again. And Moody's dog is attacked and dies on screen, which is pretty horrific for the 1980s. I even because you didn't see that a lot. Now, there are also dozens and dozens and dozens of live land crabs that were utilized. And I'm thinking that this movie's idea from Cardenas, because they are the director, writer, blah, blah, blah. I think there is an event on Christmas Island called the Great Crab Migration. It happens every year. And it's these land crabs that come out of the forest. They migrate all the way down.
I think they mentioned that, actually. They mentioned because they're too big. They're not migrating at the right point.
Exactly.
Because Mr. Handsome is a crab expert.
Right. And I think that's...
Oh, Pete,
that is Mr. Handsome, yeah. And I think that's where they got their initial ideas, from the Christmas Island crab migration. But these are much bigger crabs. They're kind of an off-white color, but they're definitely land crabs. Now...
Mm-hmm. And you can identify them because they have an asymmetrical design. They have one big claw and one tiny
claw. One claw is for mating and display. The other claw is for actually eating. Now, that being said, there is a character, I think it's Amos, who's a drunk, obviously.
And he plays banjo in the half shell.
And he's the one who loses the second crab race in the half shell. Anyway, he lives in a converted bus out on the beach, and
and I wrote in my notes, I want a movie about this guy.
I want Corman's Crab Shack.
Actually, he was just about to tell you that. Yeah, apparently Corman's Crab Shack is in a converted bus.
There you go. That's what I wanted. I wanted Corman, whoever was setting that up, to get on point and bring in the Island Claws. So anyway, back to my point. He lives in a converted bus.
I bet that's one of the menu items. Oh, that's the Island Claws.
I can imagine so. Yeah, it comes in a sandy, dusty bowl. And anyway,
yeah.
So he gets attacked after Moody sends him home. Says, "You're drunk. Go home.
Go home, Amos.
Go home, Amos. You're drunk." And he's got his banjo with him.
There's a meme.
Go home, Amos.
Go home.
I'm gonna write it down. That's funny. So, grow crabs for world hunger and go home, Amos. You're drunk.
That'll be the other T-shirt that they sell at Corman's Crab Shack.
Anyway, so he goes home and he starts, I don't know, is it a kerosene lamp or something, because he doesn't have electricity? The land crabs start just coming in.
They swarm
into his bus, and
apparently he does have kaburophobia, because he
goes
freaks
nuts,
out.
And he starts using his banjo as a weapon. He knocks over a lamp or something.
A weaponized banjo. I never thought I'd see the day.
It starts a fire.
El Mariachi had the machine gun guitar.
But this is a banjo.
He has the beating banjo.
If the banjo had caught fire, I would have said flaming banjo, and that would have been like the signature drink at Corman's Crab Shack, the flaming banjo.
Yeah, the flaming banjo. Oh my god.
So his bus, everything in the bus is catching fire. These are actual living animals. These crabs that are crawling all over the inside of his bus, which is on fire. It's on fire, and I am absolutely certain that some of these crabs died. I don't think the ASPCA, maybe that's why it didn't get distributed. The ASPCA didn't give their approval, and they shelved it. But I got to ask Brenda Watt, you had one job, Brenda. Protect the animals. What the hell, Brenda? And then I thought about it further, and I said, you know what? This was probably the last shot of the entire shoot. It had to be, because this screams crab cookout for the cast and crew.
I bet it was.
I mean, Bobby Darin and Annette Funicello came out and did a little beach dance for him.
I mean, Pete apparently just casually makes breakfast shirtless, and nobody cares. Like, Moody just walks in so we can do some subplot development that ends up going nowhere.
No, absolutely nowhere.
And he's just, no one cares. He's just like, I'm making breakfast shirtless. You want some eggs? I'm like, I want you to put a shirt on before you make my eggs, sir, because I don't think this is sanitary. But this is the early '80s in Florida. I get it, but. Yeah. But still, that was one of the things I wrote in there. Was like, really?
Okay, I want to talk about some connections. We have some connections in this. We talked about Robert Lansing and his Star Trek and his other giant monster.
Yeah. By the way, you brought up Moody's dog. Moody has a really good line about the dog. He says, because someone said, "Oh, your dog's highly trained." He says, "Yes, he's so highly trained. I have to remind him to breathe." Yes. There's some zinger. I will say there are some zinger lines in this. I did write a few down.
And again, before we get into the connections, the actress Jo McDonnell, who plays Jan Raines, she's the one who was attacked by the crabs on her bike, and she gets yanked into the forest, and then she survives, but her arm is mangled, and it actually has to be amputated. We never see it. Just the implication,
but we only know that from a little bit of voiceover.
Yeah, but the implication that. Yet again.
Wait, was that her or was that the woman?
It was the blonde, right?
Who was? What? No. I think that she was on the bike. She got away because she was Pete's love interest.
That's right. No.
And then the other woman who was Lynn. The girlfriend of Pete's friend,
right?
Who freaked out because he tried to propose to her.
I'm too young to get married.
Yeah, and when I was watching, like, I'm sorry, I'm with the guy here. I would be upset too, by this whole thing. But then she makes the horror movie mistake of saying, "I need to clear my head. I'm going to walk back. I'm going to walk back to my house in the middle of the night
through the jungle
without anybody there to keep me safe." And I'm like, this would have been the perfect time to give all of those land crabs the knives.
Yeah.
like in the viral video.
You know what?
Then they could have been slasher villains.
That would have been awesome.
And even though the attack doesn't look all that brutal, we do find out, she had a compound fracture. I'm like,
and they had to amputate her arm. Well,
they had to amputate her arm. And I'm like, what in the frick movie?
Well, when they found her arm was all bloody and torn up. And so that was what necessitated the amputation. But still, there again, from the first movie with Dr. Devereaux losing his hand, now she loses her arm. It's an escalation. We need to make another movie. Now it's been 23 years later. Make another movie. Amputate legs. Add crab legs onto a human. Suddenly he can move again.
And then make a sequel where you take all 4 limbs. They all go.
Just call it, oh God, Crab Leg Casey. Crab Leg Casey, that's it.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah, but like I said, there's so little, I have to just go off of the notes. So you know what this reminded me of initially? Because the crabs try to attack people and then they don't succeed, or if they do succeed, it's not because, it's like, Amos in the bus. They didn't actually kill him. He panicked and set everything on fire by accident.
Except?
And you know what I started thinking this was at first? I was like, are you going to be like this? Have you ever seen frogs?
Yes, I love frogs. I love frogs.
Because the thing is frogs, even on its cover, its poster, it actually has a frog with a human arm dangling out of it. So you think it's going to be about actual killer frogs, which is just silly, but okay, fine, I'll go with it. And then it ends up being everything else in the freaking swamp that kills people. The frogs just show up to the main villain at the end of it, and he panics and has a heart attack. That is the closest they get to killing anybody.
Here's my
And I'm
theory.
like, is that what this movie's going to be until the big one shows up? Like, they show up and freak people out and they die?
Here's my theory.
Doesn't quite go that way, but still.
I know this is a tangent, but my theory about frogs is the frogs were the masterminds. They were controlling all the other reptiles and amphibians in that jungle or in that swamp or whatever it was.
Yeah,
they were the master.
But anyway,
back to the connections.
So, what's your connection? Because I have random notes that I'm going to bring up about this.
Barry Nelson, who was Dr. McNeil, as we said, he was also in Twilight Zone. He was in the 1947 giant monster movie Beginning of the End. Mm-hmm. He was like a lieutenant or a colonel or something in that. He was also at the beginning of the 1980 The Shining. He was the guy who was telling Jack Torrance, Jack Nicholson's character, that you really need to get away and clear your head so you can write more. Mm-hmm. It's like his publicist or something.
Right.
Joe McDonald, the woman who played Jan Raines, the long blonde-haired heroine. The only other thing of note I could find was that in 1981, she replaced the original actress in the Munster's Revenge TV movie as Marilyn Munster.
Interesting.
It's a weird little thing. Here's where it gets interesting. Even more interesting, in my opinion. Nita Talbot, Rosie. Moody. This woman wants to be with Moody. Moody is with her. I
think he said I should marry her. She's like, well, maybe not yet, or something like that.
It's a weird relationship, but
and he makes a comment. I was like, oh, I should marry you. You got a cute butt, or something like that. Yeah.
Again, early 80s.
And he actually grabs it while they're hugging too.
Yes. What they could get away with.
I was like, how did they get away with putting that on TV? I don't think you can get away with that.
They probably sensed it, or they showed it later.
And then what was funny is one of his buddies comes in and was like, are you done?
So her name is Nita, Nita Talbot. I love Talbot. Talbot's one of my favorite last names because Lawrence Talbot is the Wolfman. Mm-hmm. Nita Talbot has a long history. She's been in a lot of stuff. Some of her more interesting things is she was in an episode of Kolchak, the Night Stalker. Mm-hmm. Many of our fans know that show. She was in Puppet Master 2 in 1990.
Yes, Puppet Master 2. That was Full Moon.
Yep, and she was in the 1997 4 episodes of Spider-Man the Animated Series as Anastasia Hardy, and I think that was Black Cat's mother.
Oh, crap. That speaks to my generation.
Yeah, even better. In 1960 to 61, she was in 39 episodes, and here's my connection back to the first movie of the Jim Backus show. For those of you who have watched Gilligan's Island, Jim Backus played Thurston Howell III, the millionaire on the island. There's our Gilligan's Island connection, ladies and gentlemen. We have 2 island movies. We have 2 Gilligan's Island actor connections on this. We're done. We're done.
Wow, that's just we're not quite, but I still got a few things I want to say, but that's crazy. I also, if I remember correctly from the reviews I read, Miss Nita was also in Chained Heat.
Yes,
for those
she was
who care.
In Chained Heat, but I tried to keep it, PG.
I know.
Above the waist.
Puppet Master 2?
Okay, Puppet Master 2, it's about puppets.
That's true. That's true. And yeah. Jimmy, must you remind me the Full Moon made 2 kaiju movies?
We'll get to them eventually.
Eventually. Oh, man.
Zarkor.
And then Kra! God. Kra. The kaiju movie whose trailer lied to me. And it made me so angry. Anyway, moving on.
Well, let's hear your notes. I want to hear.
So I got the frogs. Let me see. Oh, another connection to the original movie, giant sea worms. They talk about giant sea worms. Yeah, they bring those up in both movies, and I think it might have even been the same example too. Like I said, this is almost a remake.
Almost.
The main difference is that the crabs in this are not intelligent. This is what I thought the Corman movie was going to be. Just giant, hungry, radioactive crabs.
Yeah.
So all that to say, this one I think is better. You could argue is better made. The Corman movie is more memorable because it just goes nuts.
It's wackier.
Yeah, because it's wackier. That one is more. It's more memorable. Here's another good line from a fella named John. Let's not go breaking our arms, patting ourselves on the back.
Yeah, good line.
Yeah. Here's where I went on a tirade about the about the woman who has her arm amputated.
Yeah.
I was a little mean to her. I kind of like, I was like, this is, it goes, because it really felt like a slasher movie setup. Like they're setting her up so you don't like her, and then she just gets killed because she decides to walk. Why would you do that?
Well, okay, they've lived on this island their entire life. This is all they know. They know everybody. They know every path. They know what's going on in the forest, jungle, whatever it is, because it's tropical.
Yeah.
So
Well,
no
okay.
No
yeah.
danger.
I'm willing to believe that. It's a more believable than most instances of this. This movie does have some fake out scares, but they're not very good.
No.
Like they use the drunk guy, and it's so obvious that it's that they want you to think there's going to be a fake out scare. There really isn't. There's also a few scenes that are very poorly lit and they're really dark, and I can't tell what's going. I'm like, am I watching the Waltons after they turn the lights off? I can't believe I just made reference to that, but I can blame my parents for that. I accuse my parents.
Another great 50s movie.
Yeah, another MST3K. But that's why I even know what that is. Plus, I was nearly named after the grandfather. Anyway, moving on.
Paw?
Shut up, Jimmy. I'm not explaining that. Anyway.
I'm going to call you Paw Marchand.
No, it wasn't Paw. He has a name.
That's a shame.
He has a real name. Anyway. Now I will say when they start building up more to the giant crab, it's surprisingly effective because there are scenes where you don't see it, you see the aftermath of what this thing can do. You see overturned cars, sparking power lines, some dead bodies.
I mean, we got Amos's bus, that got knocked over.
Yeah, because it got flipped over, and so I give them credit. I give them credit. They do a lot without showing anything. Like they really established the menace of this giant crab.
I just feel that if they had taken away some of those red herrings, especially the Haitians, it didn't need to be in there. But the time period, it was a concern for our border state down there, and so I understand why they put it in. I just wish they hadn't. Because I think it would have flowed a lot better without that investment.
And also, again, going back to the Corman movie, we do have a scene where our leading man and leading lady are attacked by the giant crab in a house, in a room. The claw prop is actually pretty effective in that.
I thought it was just the leg coming through the roof.
No, I think it's actually the claw.
Okay.
I think it is the actual claw.
Because my first viewing, it seemed to me that it was coming out and it just randomly stepped on the house, and then bullied through. Because it didn't look like he was actively looking for them.
Right. I do love how when we get to the big finale, how I guess you could make the argument it's that the crab is so huge it's slow, but it's really just because the puppet can't move hardly.
They made it
he just walks over casually and ties a rope around it.
Oh, for the boat winch, because he's gonna try and drag it back into the ocean. It's like,
I love it. How he like barely even tries to dodge it. He just kind of goes over and just like and ties it off there. This thing's like. It's groggier than Jimmy when he wakes up in the morning.
Well, it was actually, if we want to go use science, it was following the cube root law. It can't move that fast because it would break something.
Probably.
It's too heavy. It's actually starting to crush under its own weight. It got too big.
Yeah, but you realize I work on an island full of creatures that disprove it, right?
Remember, this is the movie about the actual event, so...
Yeah, true. Anyway...
They're limited by science, monsters aren't.
Apparently, kaiju look at science and give it the middle finger at this point. Square cube law.
Well, Jimmy and his giant robots, the same thing. It's like...
basically,
super science works differently.
We get it, Jimmy. You love science, but you give it the middle finger sometimes too.
No, he has a special relationship with science. So
apparently, because I mean, why do you? He's miraculously survived the infamous war in space, and he still won't tell me how. Well, he told me a few ways that it might have happened, but I'm like, screw it, I don't need to know.
Time was involved, black holes, dark matter. Yeah.
Well, are you telling me Crazy Bernice saved him?
It's a possibility. I mean, in a realm of infinite possibilities, it does fit in there.
Not the worst theory you've heard. Okay.
You know what? He saw something bigger than a battleship come flying at him. That's all he remembers.
Anyway, I don't know if I'll add them in post or just do that just to be funny. But yeah, but we have all of these subplots that don't really go anywhere. Yeah. We find out that Moody blames himself for the death of Pete's parents because I'm trying to remember exactly what it was, an accident. He was too drunk to stop it.
Yeah, I think it was. Well, they were both drunk. That was the problem.
Yeah, they were both drunk, and he didn't stop it.
Yeah, he didn't.
And then there's this big dramatic scene about it that it never gets brought up again. There's the stuff with reporter lady and her dad who runs the nuclear power plant. You think, oh, that's going to be an important thing. It's going to be this big commentary on, on corporate greed or something like that. Nope, that gets dropped.
It has potential if it had just focused on one or two of these things. I mean, you can do a red herring. That's fine. Use radiation as the red herring and continue on with that. I mean, you can have a little subplot also with, Moody feeling bad about feeling responsible at the death
and then make that relevant when you get to the end.
Exactly.
Somehow, like he's like, oh crap. Just a line or something. It's like, man, I didn't save his parents, but I have to save him.
Exactly.
So that's why he's motivated. It's like, I have to make sure that Pete doesn't die.
No, and what motivates Lansing or motivates Moody is the death of his dog. And I will say this, he showed
they fridged the dog.
That's the most emotion I have ever seen out of that actor. I actually believed that when that dog died in his truck, he sat there for a good 20 seconds emoting.
Yeah.
Not saying anything. It's like,
But you know who we don't see any emotion over? The people who die fighting the crab at the end. I really feel sorry. Like somebody dies, they're like, oh no, he's dead.
Amos dies. That other half.
Well, no, there's actual emotion for Amos. Like they talk about having a funeral,
this is true.
And they're like, "Oh, did you tell him that he died?" And the bar is really somber.
He
and
was comic relief. Come on, he was.
Yeah, I get that. But then we get to the final battle, and there's a guy who's like, I think it's coming or something like that. And then the claw comes through the window and just kind of
casually slaps
barely touches him and he goes flying over and they're like, oh, he's dead. I'm like,
what? From that?
The crab didn't even get him.
A piece of paper.
Like, what did he die from the thought of being touched by the crab or something? Does the crab have death touch? At which point, why didn't more people die? We see the crab actually grabs a guy and squeeze. He's supposed to be getting squeezed, but he's clearly not getting squeezed. But the guy dies anyway. So I've just concluded that this crab has death touch, but only from the. Well, no. If it was from the claws, then what's quite possibly the coolest moment of the movie shouldn't have worked because Pete gets to do, ride 'em crab boy.
Yeah, he does.
Ride 'em. I wrote it as ride 'em crab claw, but it should be ride 'em crab boy because he jumps on the claw like it's a bucking bronco and is just doing whatever on that thing. And I'm like, this is the best moment of the movie. Okay. I did not go into this thinking that I would see this. All he needed was a cowboy hat and it would have been that. Okay. You know what? If they had given Pete a cowboy hat
and a lasso,
he jumped on the freaking crab claw, that actually might have gotten it a cult following. Make him a Floridian cowboy.
I have it even better. He gets out there. He's got the cowboy hat. He's got cowboy boots, a lasso, shorts, no shirt.
There you go.
There's the movie. Right there.
There. That would make the movie. Right there. Why? We just Island Claws. I just gave you a reason. Like, make this guy like, I don't know. Like, we already see that he's like this young, fit, virile, man's man sort of a guy. Like, he doesn't ask what's her name for a date. He just says, I'm going to take you to dinner tonight. And she's like, oh, you didn't even ask. And it's like, well, just to let you know, I'm scared that I even did this. It's like, then she's like, okay, we can negotiate here a little bit. It's like, sure, nice. But it'll be 8:30 instead of 8, so it's like, okay. So he's clearly make him a John Wayne fan. Like have him love cowboy movies. He loves John Wayne. And then he shows up with a lasso, cowboy hat, no shirt,
Are we rewriting this movie as we speak? We got to rewrite this. Somebody get the film right.
Island Claws, and we will make it what it should have been. Like, we could have gotten it a distributor if we had just done a crab riding cowboy. That's what we needed.
So once again, folks, for those of you who are listening, who have stuck with us this long, see this movie. Judge for yourself. I like it. I actually really enjoyed both viewings of it, regardless of the fact that we're nitpicking it to death. I think it's fun.
Yeah,
I like.
It's not as
bad.
wild or as memorable as Corman's Crabs, but still,
nothing is really, even in the 50s.
Yeah, it's hard to be. But you know what? Maybe if Corman could have made this,
it
actually 80s Corman, that probably would have been a bad idea.
Yeah, it would have been a bad idea.
Probably a bad idea. Our version is better.
Yes, well, because we're subtracting the stuff that doesn't need to be there, and we're adding some.
Yeah, we take out the Haitians. We make Pete a cowboy.
Yeah. Boy, howdy! I sure do love a crab cookout. Yeah.
No,
you got to have a giant pot of boiling water or something to kill this thing. Just like what is it, Fantastic Island?
Yeah, well, we should mention
Mysterious Island. Sorry,
Pete. Yeah, we should mention Pete does get to kill the crab.
Yes, he does.
He stabs it in the head
with poison. Well,
yeah,
the head. He finds
they really sell it because they're like he jabs. He gets on top of the shell and he jabs this into the crab's head, and you see they do reaction shots of the crab with its little eye stalks. It's like and there's blood coming down between the eye stalks and everything.
So
and, they sell it, and then they do the crane shot that you mentioned because it just just flops down.
And there was that little movement as people start moving in and said, "Oh, it's dead." And that the claw kind of moved out a little bit. It's like, oh, it's still alive. It's like, no, sorry, just muscle reaction. But them's good eating.
So I do think the potential is there.
Yeah.
You just needed to nudge it a little bit, just a little bit.
Okay. Now that we've gotten our kind of reviews and commentaries, and I just got to ask: you've seen both movies. You had never seen both movies. Did you have fun? Did you enjoy these on the first viewing basis?
I did, actually.
Okay.
I think the Corman movie is more memorable. Here's the weird thing. The Corman movie is more memorable, but this is a better movie?
Yes, I agree. I absolutely agree. And it's because the Corman movie scared me as a child that for me, why it is so much more memorable, why I've seen it continuously over and over and over again. If I had seen this as a kid, I'm not sure what I would have thought. I mean, this one is technically scarier because of the buildup and the suspense and not seeing the threat for so long and technically the mutilations, which are pretty tame by today's standards. But I'm so happy for Vintage Video for bringing this to my awareness so that I could bring it to the wider kaiju community.
Right.
Again, it's not an intelligent crab. It's not really what you would consider a kaiju. It doesn't go on a major rampage. It only destroys 2 buildings, but it's got 3 dogs and about 5 people.
Yeah.
So,
and a legion of normal sized land crabs as minions, apparently. That's my theory. Like, the big one is telling the little one, she's like, go kill the humans and eat the dog.
Yes. Yeah. I actually think about maybe there it's progeny. Maybe this one is a giant.
Go, my children.
Eat. Consume. For too long have the humans eaten us at crab cookouts. We shall eat them.
I don't think we could get away if we let the thing talk like in the Corman movie. I think we would be veering into parody territory. I don't want parody territory. I want crazy.
Yeah,
but I want a different kind of crazy from the Corman movie.
Okay, I think if they had a better prop, if they had a better puppet, if it had better range of motion, I would like to have seen it actually in that ending denouement where everything is happening. Pick up cars and use them. Or grab a telephone pole, knock out all the power as it snaps it in half, and then uses it to swipe away the people in front.
And Moody should get a little bit drunk and then run out there with a shotgun and shoot it in the face or something,
and have no effect.
And it doesn't.
I think Moody,
it doesn't affect. It doesn't work.
I think Moody should die dramatically, and that's what spurs Pete. Not just dies, but gets crushed. Pete then kills it. Or distracts it long enough. He goes to Moody. Moody says, "I am sorry. I blame myself for your parents' death." Blah blah. And then you have that heartfelt moment as he's dying, the same way his dog did.
Yeah, and then that's when he's like, Okay, then he like rips off the shirt, puts on the cowboy hat.
Grabs his lasso.
He goes over and he starts
Even
lasso.
better. Oh, even better. He connects his lasso to the downed power lines that the crab just did. He electrocutes it to death. Then we have
there you go.
The Corman connection. We're back.
Yeah, there you go. Sure, we'll let Schwarzenegger play Pete.
Well, 1980, he was doing Conan? So
yeah, it was a couple years before Conan. Yeah. I mean, like, there would have been several 80s action stars that could have done this. Sylvester Stallone could have been Pete. Oh yeah, you got to kill the crab.
Yo, crab, I'm your worst nightmare. Oh, Jan Michael Vincent. Get Jan Michael Vincent. He wasn't doing anything in 1980. He could do it.
Remind me who he is.
Oh my God. He was in Damnation Alley. He was in Beastmaster. No, not Beastmaster. That was Mark Singer.
Okay.
Jan Michael Vincent was an Airwolf.
Oh, okay.
He was the main actor, but he was a raging alcoholic and lost that.
Yeah, there you go. But anyway, we do have, I guess you say, I'm going to call it a mini Toku topic, because we don't typically do Toku topics for well, if it's an episode that's not part of the main season series. But you suggested this to me, and
Yes.
after having seen Attack of the Crab Monsters, I'm like, I think this inspired the meme. Because this became apparently a meme for a little while, but it's a scientific term, carcinization.
Love it.
So do you want to let the people know what, even though I have it in my notes, do you want to let people know what carcinization is?
Give me a second.
It's weirdly appropriate for Corman's crabs.
Carcinization is an example of convergent evolution in which a crustacean evolves into a crab-like form from a non-crab-like form. This happens over and over and over again in the evolutionary record. They don't know why it happens. They don't know how it happens. But it has happened at least, I think it says here.
I have notes on that.
Yeah. It just keeps happening over and over. And these are all different species, and they are all turning into crabs.
It said that it's one of my notes here says, quote, the defining features of crabbiness. Are we talking about... Are we trying to say, when you bring up crabbiness, I have to put this out there. Are we trying to say that Clint Eastwood has been carcinized? Because he tells everybody to get off his lawn. Anyway.
Well, he definitely has an immortal face.
Evolved at least 5 times in the past 250 million years.
There you go, 5 times. I knew it was
5 times. Yeah.
Yeah, they give some examples.
Yeah, and this concept, it's been around, the term's been around for about 140 years.
Yeah.
And it was introduced into evolutionary biology by someone named L.A. Borradaile.
Oh, no.
Who described...
No. Even better, Lancelot Alexander Borradaile.
Wow.
Lancelot Alexander Borradaile.
Why is he a weirdo scientist and not a pulp hero?
He is
with
now.
A name like that.
He is now. I will write it.
You need to.
Oh,
and he needs to fight giant crabs.
Yes! Or he is
his arch nemesis are crabmen.
Oh, yes, crabmen from the center of the earth.
There you go.
That is a pulp hero. That's a pulp hero right there.
Yeah, there you go. He described it as, quote, and I quote, one of the many attempts of nature to evolve a crab, end quote.
It's ridiculous.
Okay. I just want to point out, evolution is weird.
It is fascinating.
It apparently loves seafood. I mean, like, it's like, I want everything to be a crab. Why?
Not just that.
Why does Mother Nature love crabs?
Well, there's also the opposite theory, the decarcinization.
There's hypercarcinization and decarcinization,
where they go backwards. Like, some examples include the coconut crab, which are these absolutely gigantic land crabs their claws are so strong they can tear open coconut husks. They're frightening animals that evolved from hermit crabs, but have lost their casings, the housings that they used to go in, and now they're going backward. It's
so does that mean Ebora has been decarcinized?
Ebora is a giant shrimp. I mean, it's not even a lobster, it's a shrimp.
I'm just saying, so apparently at one point he lost his shell.
Well, no,
What'd you
because
say?
not all crabs wear shells, and not all shells wear crabs.
Yeah, that's right. Because here's the thing: I had to look like what are the characteristics of
Crab,
this. So
right.
for something to be carcinized, it has to have a flat carapace, so a hard upper shell, a folded pleon, which is the abdomen or tail
The underneath. Yeah.
Yeah. And it has to be largely hidden under the crab body,
Right.
unlike that
The
of a
lobster,
lobster, which is visible. In decarcinization, the carapace is elongated and narrow. The pleon is not bent.
Right.
And yeah, I think that's all the most important thing. So it also says these groups, quote, these groups had one common ancestor, but over 300 million years ago. Oh, but over 3 million years ago. That means there's a lot of time for evolution, but still the crabs keep coming, end quote. So, yeah.
It's a fascinating...
Yeah, and there are two groups of crabs when you're talking about this. The true crabs, which are like, what is it, Brachyura?
Yes.
Yeah, and then false crabs are Anomura.
Anomura.
You have to make distinctions with between these.
It's
yeah. And it also says, we talked about how many times it's happened. It said, what's more, this is a direct quotation, what's more, crabbiness has been lost possibly 7 times or more.
Yep.
And then it also says the most visible differences between the true and the false crabs. You bet it sounds weird. This sounds weirdly elitist. Now I'm subtly picturing.
I'm sorry, you're not
is there like master race crabs now? They're like, we are the true crabs, and you are not. I mean,
it just brings up the South Park episode. Crab people look like crab, taste like people.
Yeah, I just sitting here thinking, like, I'm picturing one of the Corman crabs with a little Hitler mustache now.
The crab claws do go up at angles. So.
Yeah, they do. Oh my god!
You know what?
God, we're making a new B movie.
Wait a minute.
Nazi crabs. Attack of the Nazi crabs.
Remind me where Starfish Hitler comes from again.
Kamen Rider X.
They missed the boat.
Crab Hitler.
Crab Hitler.
Yeah. Anyway, so it says that the difference between the true and the false crabs is the walking legs. True crabs have 4 pairs of lanky legs. False crabs only have 3. And they have another pint-sized pair in the back.
Because I know the blue crab, which is popular on people's plates and whatever. Blue crab has 3 sets of legs, and then the 2 back ones are fins. They have, instead of legs, they are look like paddles, and so they are very good swimmers because it goes and they get the hell out of Dodge. So I guess they are false crabs. So it's interesting.
So what's going on is scientists are just trying to figure out, because they've been observing all of these things. This whole carcinization thing is, it's a big theory within evolution. So they're trying to is there an evolutionary advantage to a crab-like shape?
It's a subreddit.
Figure that out. Yeah,
it's a subreddit of the evolutionary theory.
Yeah, and say what you want about Reddit, but yeah.
Then there's Rule 34.
And the theory that I saw that was in some of these articles I was looking at. By the way, I did find, without a paywall, it's in the notes, so go to monsterandfilmvault.com for this episode so you can get a link to it. I did find a scholarly article talking about this. I looked it over a little bit. It was full of so much mumbo jumbo that I did not have the time or patience to try to sort out at that time. So I'm okay, you're the scientist. I'm going to go with the sources to translate this for me.
Which is always the way to do it.
Yeah. So what I found is that some have wondered if the crab-like form is the ultimate in evolution, but no one is sure. Scientists aren't sure. The crab body wouldn't be conducive, because they said it wouldn't be conducive to all environments. It just doesn't make sense for all environments.
Yeah, land.
Yeah.
They tend to crush under their own weight if they're any bigger than a coconut crab.
Yeah. So one line that I found related to this, a quote, and while right now the grains from a crab shape are a mystery, biologists think it could have something to do with the ability to colonize new habitats or diversify into a new species. Oh, I'm having flashbacks to Corman's crabs here. After all, there are more than 7,000 unique species of brachyurans scampering around the world today compared to only a handful of lobster species, end quote.
That's got to tell you something.
Yeah, it's got to tell you something. Here's the funny thing. this is a stupid question, but I'll ask it anyway.
Sure.
You've read The Time Machine, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
You remember what the time traveler encounters when he goes into the far-flung future, like even farther than when he was meeting the Eloy and the Morlocks?
Yes, because that's when he's, I think, loses consciousness and he ends up at the end of the world where it's just weird crab
You remember
things.
what he ran into?
Yeah, giant crab things.
Giant crabs. So apparently, even H.G. Wells was up on this. The world is going to be ruled by crabs.
Well, I've got even one more. What
is it? Crabs are our future. Like there you go. That
crabs are our future.
Yeah, Corbin, there's another T-shirt for you. Crabs are our future.
I have one more reference for you from Stephen King, from his Dark Tower series. The gunslinger ends up on a world that is virtually empty because it's a multiple worlds epic, where he meets these crab things, these crab monsters, lobstrosities is what he calls them, which is a great name. It's a great name. Lobstrosity is a wonderful name. But they talk. They only say a few things. Data chick, data chuck. Data chick, data chuck, data chick, data chuck. And they constantly repeat this over and over again. He has to blow them away with his gun after one of them takes 3 of his fingers off one of his hands. But again, the only sign of life in that realm are these lobstrosities. It's like, again, there's more crab things in other literature. And so I did not realize I was opening up a Pandora's box. I was just doing funny puppet movies.
I know. But just to finish off, some other examples, like I said, of Anomura. So you have king crabs, porcelain crabs, hairy stone crab, hermit crabs, like the coconut crab, and it says the king crab first appeared in the late Cenozoic era, and Brachyura, the true crabs, were early Jurassic. And there's what's called a cichlida, which strikingly resemble crabs. That those are now extinct.
Right.
King crabs are particularly well studied because about this because they're asymmetrical, so their biology fits it very well.
Interesting.
Yep. And just to let you know, there's a huge diversity in sizes for crab species, excluding poor Ebra and Corman's crabs. Hular, excluding Hular, who has been impossibly taxidermied.
Or they just kept the stalactite through his brain.
Well, that's true. Yeah, that's true. Because if they take it out, he's gonna. Oh God, if they don't anybody take that out, because I don't want to deal with. It's somebody. Please don't. Please don't. We don't need. I would hate. Well, he'll be lucky if Ozaki and his mutants show up, but you know who's going to be really unlucky if they try to intervene? My friends Raymond and Gary.
Oh, why so?
I'm not at liberty to say. Anyway.
Of course you're not.
Yeah.
You're
it was just
under legal obligation.
Anyway, the sizes. The smallest crab is the pea crab. Pea, as in like the food.
Yep. They're
only millimeters. Little millimeters. And how appropriate. The largest is a Japanese crab.
Yes.
The big spider crab.
Yep.
That is 12 feet from claw to claw.
Good Lord.
Again, excluding Ebra and Hula.
Wow.
And whatever other kaiju are probably going to be found and brought to the island.
And I bet it's tasty too.
Yeah. I'm sure these spider crabs are going to be very popular at Corman's new restaurant. But yeah, so there you go. If the internet memes are to be believed, we're all going to end up being crabs, apparently. Scientists say it's not quite like that, but it's funnier that way. And
it's always funnier that way.
Yeah, it's always funnier that way. And I would love to pick Mr. Griffith's brain or Corman. Well, I could probably talk to Corman. I don't know if Griffith is still alive anymore, but Corman's still around. Maybe I could ask him. It's like, did you know about carcinization when you made Attack of the Crab Monsters? Did that factor into this? Was this movie trying to say, oh, we're just skipping a few million generations of human evolution here, I guess, maybe. I don't know. So maybe you could call it Carcinization the movie. I don't know. Carcinization should be the name of a sauce at Corman's Crab Shack. Alrighty. You got any other comments on this
Well,
on the scientific premise that's about as bonkers as the movies we talked about.
The fact that I had come across it I don't know how it came across my feed or in my brain or when
the
I ran
memes, I guess, because I guess it was a meme.
It might have been. I think it was. No, it was a TikTok. It was the crab with the knife. And then someone said, "Oh, that's carcinization. That must be little Timmy." And I went, I said, "What?" And so I typed in carcinization into my Google search engine and then fell down a rabbit hole for the next 3 hours.
Oh my gosh.
And it was hilarious.
God help us if Corman makes a mascot named Kenny the Crab. Yes, it would. Let's wrap things up before this gets more unhinged. Alrighty. Since we've already gone, I mean, we did a double feature, so the episode's gone a little long already. So we'll skip listener feedback for now, but I want to remind everybody, please either leave comments on the MIFV YouTube channel on whatever episodes you want, or send your feedback to monsterislandfilmvault@gmail.com. But I don't care what episode it is. Just send us stuff in. It'll get read on the show. I love hearing from people. It's what keeps us podcasters going. So for future reference, send that in so you can be mentioned. It can all be read on a future episode. But in the meantime, my friend, you know what time it is?
Yes, I do.
It's time for the Patreon shoutouts.
I shall ask thee once again, will you chant my name?
Danny DiManna!
Eli Harris. Click, 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 click.
Bex from Redeemed Otaku!
Damon Noyes, you will become one with us. Click, 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 click.
The Cellcast!
Eric Edison. Click, 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 click.
Ted Williams!
Wynja, the ninja. Click, 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 click.
Brad Batman Eddleman!
Christopher Riner. Click, 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 click.
The Indiscrite One! Jake Hambrick! Edwin Gonzalez! Matt Walsh! But not that Matt Walsh. Jonathan Courtright! Robert Kidd! Leon Campbell! Michael Watson! Oh no, we joined the crabs.
You have become one with the crabs.
Oh no.
Foolish. Very foolish.
And we did have Dr. German in there, so
That's true.
he did he get eaten?
Yeah, he got eaten. Everybody
He got
except
eaten,
Brett.
so we do potentially have a Nazi crab.
So the professor and Dale and Martha, the only three that survived. Well,
yeah, that is true.
He
Yeah.
didn't get eaten.
How dare you accuse me of racism?
It's crabism.
Just assume crabism. No, because I said Dr. German could be a Nazi.
Yeah, there's no indication that Colonel German was ever a Nazi. Why he's working as a scientist for the United States government and military. No, he wasn't a Nazi scientist.
The question becomes, did we ever see him with a paperclip?
But he was always wearing those sunglasses. Maybe he was hiding something.
Anyway, moving on.
Anyway, okay.
So I just realized after all of this, I never asked you how you got to Seoul.
That is a very interesting but completely boring thing. I was actually vacationing in Honolulu. And
oh, really?
Yeah. And woke up one morning and I decided, you know what? I'm going to charter a boat. I want to go fishing. I love fishing. And I went out. I didn't have a lot of money because, I'm just a working stiff. So I thought I'd take a 3-hour tour. I had to go with a lot of other people, of course, who are just tourists. And well, storm comes out of nowhere. We get blown off course and we ended up here. And that's my story.
Impressive.
I'm sticking to it. And yeah, So
That's impressive. Did you have to be rescued by the Korean Navy or something like that?
oddly enough, it was a gaggle of Korean teenagers in skimpy bathing outfits.
Oh,
Yeah, and
there are worse ways to be rescued.
they were having a beach party. They got this big old pot out there, boiling water. They were throwing crabs in it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Just be glad you didn't go a little bit farther north.
Yeah, thankfully the storm was a tropical storm, and it just kept us at a certain
Going. Yeah. I understand that.
yeah.
I understand that. Yes, quite. Why am I still saying that? Really? You have a song for us?
I have a song for us. I decided to be a little bit optimistic because I did not finish the song, but I have the beginnings of a song about our Corman crab movie. Me. No, not that high. Wata. Just sit right back and you'll hear a tale of a fearsome trip that ended with a lot of death, but began on a tiny ship. A seaman got his head lopped off, others disappeared. The scientists saved the world that day, even though they were afeared. Thunder. The island slowly sank away. The crabs got really smart. The heroes couldn't hurt their foes, even though they all had heart. There's another verse in there, and I just did not have time. So sorry. Hey, my wife was impressed. You shut up.
Jeez, I was going to suggest that you go talk to to Kevin Gomer at the Markalite Lounge next time you're on the island. He could sing that.
This is true. He's probably got a better singing voice than I do.
Yeah, there you go.
And I pulled this out of my last night too. So I mean,
oh well, yeah, I mean that's impressive. That's impressive. There are professional songwriters who can't work that fast. I'm just saying.
There are some who work even faster, and it shows.
All right. Well, we gotta let's finish some things up here. I gotta let everybody know what our next, actually, technically 3 episodes are gonna be, because we do have a bonus episode coming up while we're still here in Seoul, South Korea. It was actually suggested and then basically demanded by Danny DiManna.
So
see, I got a new nickname for him, because I've made so many jokes off of his name. But no, Danny DiManna of the Godzilla Novelization Project, he basically said, you need to talk about Space Monster Wang Mogwai, and I need to be on it. So it's going to happen while we're still in South Korea. Oh, boyser. This movie.
Oh, is it that? I still need to watch it. I have here at my own chalet here in South Korea. I brought it with me. I should probably go and watch it.
I got 5 words for you. Spider King of the Kennys.
Oh no!
But Jimmy refuses to bow to him because he is in fact a Kenny. Yeah.
Wow.
I
read the
it's something. It's something. But it continues what seems to be the Korean tradition of making kaiju movies where the story around it is more interesting than the movie.
Okay, then. Well, the fact that it's a truly lost and found film, that they thought it was lost forever, and now we have, it's like the King Kong movie from Japan that was lost in the bombing.
Yeah, not quite as dire as that, because from what I understand, it was shown in South Korea a few times.
Well, that's
then it was unleashed upon the world by SRS. So it'll be our second SRS cinema movie.
First one was what? Howl from
Zillafoot.
Zillafoot. You haven't done Howl from the Fog yet?
Howl from Beyond the Fog? No, that is on the list. I really want that one.
It's a beautiful movie.
It's a beautiful movie. Yeah, it is. Correction, it's actually our 3rd SRS cinema title. The other one being obviously The Whale God, but this is what happens when you do impromptu episodes. Regardless, our next episode, we don't quite get back to the world tour. We have a crossover between The Conquest and Godzilla Redux, because Yep, the kaiju event of the year is upon us. Godzilla Kong, Godzilla Cross Kong, Godzilla X Kong, however you want to say it. People really want to get into arguments with me about this. Regardless, the new Empire is finally dropping, and it's going to be exciting. So, be on the lookout for that episode, which will have as our guests Donnie Winter and our mystery guest that I have to make sure I can make arrangements for because they're kind of a big deal. So, like I said, be on the lookout for that. Now, back to the episode. But that's our bonus episode. Our next regular episode, we're getting back to the MIFV World Tour.
Yeah.
With Youngery's D-Make, as I like to call it. 1999/2001. Listen to the episode. I will explain later, as the doctor was said often in one comedy special. Reptilian.
Oh, God.
And my guest for that will be Elijah, the littlest gatekeeper Thomas of the Kaiju Conversation podcast, who will be here to argue that it's good because he knows more about this movie than anyone who didn't work on it should know.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry they're going to put you through that. I really am.
No, I've already seen it once. I've been to Kaiju Quarantine. I've seen it once already.
I mean,
Jimmy, you always want a jetpack.
And ineffective.
That will be relevant.
And
trust me,
overacting.
that is relevant.
I know it's incredibly relevant.
Yeah, very, very relevant. And then, funny enough, some people would argue that this is possibly worse than Reptilian. And all I have to say to that is, you are on drugs. We're getting back to Godzilla Redux with the infamous All Monsters Attack, aka Godzilla's Revenge.
Yes. Good. Let the hate flow through you.
I have no hate for this movie.
I did for the longest time. And then I got the Criterion Collection and saw it as it was originally intended to be seen and appreciated it a lot more.
There you go. That's the secret.
Yep.
Watch it in Japanese. And I will be joined by two of, I think, honestly, the best friends I have on this podcast, or at least the two of the best friends of the podcast. I don't know. I'm probably offending several people by saying
I'm sitting right here. You're offending
yeah,
me.
you're sitting right there. Michael is yelling at me right now. Whatever. I am having John LeMay and Neil Reeby on.
Okay.
For this one.
You know what? You may be forgiven for John LeMay. I'll forgive you.
I'm just saying. I got two amazing guests for that movie, and we are going. If you haven't already figured it out, because it's been trendy to reevaluate it, if you haven't already, be prepared to reevaluate it,
Yep.
Kaiju lovers.
Yep.
You will never be able to look at that movie the same ever again. But like I said, watch it in Japanese. Otherwise, you got to put up with Minya sounding like the world's worst Muppet.
Well, I don't know, Timmy.
Godzilla says, I suck.
They almost sounded like Hank Hill. I'm sure
I just like that. Like, that's a meme right there. Like, that's a meme template right there. Just a picture of Minya, and just it always starts with the text, Godzilla says, and then you just put something underneath.
I think you should have a picture of Godzilla, over his hands on his, it's like, that boy ain't right.
That boy ain't right. He isn't right, apparently. I mean, he was born premature, was hatched out of an egg by giant mantises who proceeded to abuse him and hit him in the head with rocks. And
he had abusive parents. I mean,
yeah, Godzilla's pretty harsh.
Well, abusive foster parents in the Kamacuras, because they're the ones who were there at his hatching, and at least early on, an abusive father figure. So
yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, it's poor Minya.
Poor Minya.
Do we call him Minya, or is it Manila? I mean,
I say Minya.
Yeah, I tend to too, because Manila sounds like an envelope. Thank you. I'm here all week at Kevin Gomorrah's.
Why am I now? I have this horrible image of someone taking a trifold letter and stuffing it in Minya's mouth to mail him out to you. And then you're like picking up minions and stuffing them into mailboxes.
Only if it's a one from All Monsters Attack, because that one changes sizes.
True. Very, very true. Which is the one we're going to be talking about.
Indeed.
It'll be noteworthy because that is the first movie to use the name Monster Island.
Yes.
Although that Monster Island technically does not exist.
No, because it's all in the imagination of a child.
Yep, so I guess it's a fantasy Monster Island.
I am Mr. Nakamura, your host. Welcome to Fantasy Monster Island.
I've been sitting on that joke for months.
I'm sure you have.
How dare you mock my comedy timing? I'm still funnier than you.
The joke is good. The timing is off. You need Shatnerian timing.
Yeah, I do. And Jimmy, tread lightly. Anyway, now it's time for shameless self-promotion, which apparently is now a catchphrase associated with me and my podcast. Go figure.
Well, since you originated it.
I guess. Anyway, it's become one of the most mockable lines from this show. But anyway, what do you got for us, Mr. Noyes?
I did. I don't know. Did we talk about it last time? Where?
Oh, about the movies you were in? Yeah, you talked about it.
Trial of Bruce Wayne.
Oh no!
That's right.
No, we didn't. I got you to live the dream.
Thanks to you.
I got you to live the dream because my friend Carl Dutton, who runs Scyther Media and does Power Rangers the audio drama and X-Men the audio drama, started doing a mini series called The Trial of Bruce Wayne, which is honestly one of the most unique Batman stories I've come across in a long time. It's a courtroom drama where Bruce Wayne is literally put on trial for being Batman because he gets outed as Batman. And you got to voice your favorite Batman villain. And in fact, I was also auditioning. It was for the Riddler. I was also auditioning for him, but I flat out told Carl, please pick Damon.
Well, he must.
This would make him exceedingly happy.
Oh, it was a dream come true. The Edward Nygma, the Riddler, has been my favorite since his inception, and I much prefer the 1980s, 1990s version where he is not a combat guy. It is all about the puzzle, and if Batman solves the puzzle, catches Riddler, he gives up. He will not fight. It's not about the fight for him. So I kind of based him on that. I stayed away from Jim Carrey. I stayed away from Frank Gorshin. Any version of it, I just went a very kind of... He knows he's the smartest man in the room. And he just really doesn't care about anybody else. He's just pissed off that he got caught.
Yeah, and there were some great lines in there too. I'm like some of them. I'm like, did Carl make this up, or is this some sort of British term I don't know about? My favorite one being, I should say, where he says he nailed Robin in the daddy bag.
Yes, the daddy bag. That was. Oh my gosh.
Good. That was so good. I was extremely happy to hear that you got the part. And then when I listened to the episode, I'm like, oh my gosh, he is so perfect.
I played it for people who don't know the Batman mythos other than beyond the 1966 and the more popular movies. And my wife is always going to like my work, so she doesn't count. But her sister sat there and just, oh my God, you did that? I said, yeah. I mean, it's just voice acting. And she says, no, I could see you, this character all in green with his feet up, lounging there, answering questions. And I went, oh my God, that's exactly how I recorded it.
Yep. It is so good. If you haven't listened to Carl's stuff at Scyther Inc., you really should.
Please do. His stuff is phenomenal.
It is phenomenal. It's all fan made, but it sounds extremely professional. I recently actually got to join I'm on the cast for Power Rangers. I voiced my very unfortunate former roommate, Mr. Rito, the Skeleton Man. Rita Repulsa's brother. Very obnoxious brother. Just ask Michael. Anyway, and I joined the X-Men cast playing, of all people,
who'd you end up?
Deadpool.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Out of context, Deadpool.
Deadpool. Never in my life would I have thought I would play a superhero, let alone Deadpool.
Wow, Merc with a mouth. Well, that
Merc with a mouth.
I'm sure your fans and your friends will agree that is probably the most perfect one for you.
I mean, I did have fun recording it. Like how at least a quarter of the audio I sent to Carl was ad libs.
Of course it was,
and he kept a lot of them.
I gotta ask: what decade is he in with that now? Is this the 80s?
It's still, I think, technically the 80s, but he's getting close enough to the 90s that Deadpool got to make a cameo.
Okay. I want to audition for any open roles, and hopefully he's got some good ones left. I mean, my favorite is Kurt Wagner, but I know that
Nightcrawler's already been cast.
Yeah, I knew that, so I knew I wasn't going to get him
unless the role opens up again. Yeah. I'll probably not.
But I'm not as familiar with the extreme '90s team that came about. Unfortunately,
you could be Cable, and then we could act opposite each other because Cable and Deadpool have connections.
This is true. Well,
just make yourself sound gravelly.
I can do that. It's not that hard. I come from a future that you will not ever imagine. I almost die every day.
Sure, Thanos.
Either that or Omega Red, because I'm dying to do my Russian.
Omega Red would be great.
You think you are going to stop me, X-Men? Oh, sure, I laugh at you. I am proud Soviet.
I strangle you with tentacles.
With my biomechanical tentacles. No, I did not say tentacles.
Carl, consider this his audition for Omega Red.
I mean, there's almost nobody more 90s than Omega Red.
I don't remember when Omega Red first showed up. He seems like an 80s character.
I think he debuted like 88 and then crossed over into the 90s.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me because he's extremely Cold War.
Extremely Cold War and very over the top. So
I was in fact wrong.
When was he?
1992.
Yes! He is the 90s, Omega Red. And he's like a hodgepodge of powers too. It makes no sense.
Because 90s.
Because 90s.
Okay, fine. We'll get on with it.
Sorry. Thank you, producer.
He's just doing his job. Just doing his job. Yeah. All I will mention then is, if you haven't already, do listen to the Power Trip and listen to the back catalog of Henshin Men and check out my author website, nathanjsmarchand.com, because I got lots of stuff coming out. I'm always working on something. I'm potentially a workaholic.
Potentially? You know how hard it is to get out contact with you sometimes?
Hi, my name is Nate, and I'm a workaholic. Hi, welcome to WA.
Writers Anonymous.
No, Workaholics Anonymous.
Okay, that might work. Click, 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 click.
Oh, okay. Anyway,
there's always
thank you. We're signing off now. So Jimmy, cue the credits, please, and don't be crabby. Thank you for listening to the Monster Island Film Vault, a podcast produced and hosted by Nate Marchand. Our executive producer is Damon Noyes. If you want to be heard on the show, we'd love to hear from you, so email us at monsterislandfilmvault@gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok. You can also follow Jimmy from NASA on Twitter and our many colorful characters using the links in the show notes, which are on our website, monsterislandfilmvault.com. Don't forget to join our official Facebook group and Discord server, The Markalite Lounge. Our podcast logo was designed by Rebecca Hudgens. Follow her on Twitter and Instagram at super_R_illustrations. Sound effects sourced from freesound.org and created by JP Gant. Our theme song is Wanderer on the Offensive, live edit by B33J, Sarax, Juan Madrano, and Nonsensical Lexus, which is a remix of Counterattack and The Opened Way by Koatani from Shadow of the Colossus. Additional music includes Every Country Has a Monster, performed by Jonah Ray, and Chant My Name, a cover by Second Archive of the song by Masaki Endo. All film and audio clips belong to their respective copyright holders, and no infringement is intended or implied. Please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and/or Podchaser to spread the word about the show. You can even support us by joining MIFV Max on Patreon. MIFV is a Moonlighting Ninjas media production and a proud member of Pod Nation. Sayonara!